Hello. I'm here with some random geek. You want to say hello?
Hello, I am SomeRandomGeek. Jonathan's my real name, and that's public knowledge. And yeah, I'm just a friend of Garrett's. We met over social media, and actually, no, Garrett, you were the one that led me to like feminism, and so this is kind of special for you. But we're going to be talking about Captain Marvel. Oh, wait, did I just say this is special for you? No, it's special for me. Maybe it's special for you. I don't know.
Well, actually, I mean, because I wanted to do a hangout that's looking at both the sort of 50% geek stuff and 50% politics. So who better?
Yes.
You know?
I mean, I chose the name SomeRandomGeek for that reason as well. My geeky qualifications are: I have over 1,100 video games. I'm a fan of good anime, and I play Magic the Gathering sometimes. And it's like that's pretty much it. Like Star Wars and Star Trek, that's general thing. Yeah.
Well, actually, on the subject of Star Trek, I've got a sort of, Steve Shives has that Trek Actually series. He does.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna do sort of a take on that called Trek Anarchistly, and it's gonna be 3 videos looking at stuff to do with Star Trek from a sort of anarchist perspective. One of them is going to be about a model for what Starfleet could look like if it was anarchist, if it was organized along anarchist lines. Another one is going to be about the episode of DS9 with the strike and where they unionized Quark's bar.
Oh yes, that one. I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third one is going to be about the Maquis and sort of how the Federation tries to deal with them and fails, and like everything goes horribly wrong. And Cisco's attitude towards them in particular, just about like how it's so flawed and hypocritical, and yeah, but yeah, so that should be fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, mainly, well, at least to start with, I wanted to talk about Captain Marvel today, because well, it's the thing that's out at the moment. I don't normally actually chime in on current events just because I'm already so bogged down with stuff I'm doing that I don't have the time. I don't have the time. But at the moment, it seems like a nice little holiday because I've been working on the video I'm working on for so long. Honestly, like on my old channel, I did the response to Armored Skeptic and the response to Sargon. Both of those took me a month. They took me a month each. And I thought that was a long time back then. For me, that was a long time. I've been working on this now. If you this not including any reading of the book and annotating the book and writing the script or any additional research on top of that, excluding all of that stuff, just recording the script and editing the video. I've been working on it now for 3 months.
Wow, yeah, and here I am. I primarily like put out the edited quality video like that within 3 months, but all I do is just like, here's this anime movie I want you to all see. Here's a review of it because I'm just a procrastinator, unfortunately. So
yeah. No, I mean I am to a degree as well, but I mean the way that I look at, I mean, working on videos for me at least, like it's both better than having a sort of shift work job and less good than it at the same time, because like I don't have to ever like sit in for a stretch of hours at a time doing nothing else and being like somewhere else doing something. I'm always at home, so I'm always got access to all the stuff that I normally have access to, and I can pet my dog anytime I want and all that stuff, and take a break whenever and all that. But I basically work on videos. I work on the video I'm working on like round the clock. Whenever I'm awake and at home, I'm doing that. If I'm not doing that, I'm taking a break to eat or to sleep or to, clean or wash or whatever. But other than that, I'm pretty much just doing that all the time. And so like I mean, my brain is so full of like trade unions and strikes and like, I mean, the video goes into all kinds of stuff. So at the moment, I've got a lot of Vietnam stuff on my mind because I've been working on that part of the video. But yeah, it's it's just nice to talk about something that's a little lighter, And even the political side of this is light, I mean, because the man baby I mean that is a joke more than anything. It's not it's a side of the right that isn't actually like threatening anyone or like posing a massive threat to anyone. They're just a pathetic bunch of idiots. It is kind of, so even that is like a lighter side of things, which is nice. But yeah, so I guess we should start with oh yeah, actually that reminds me, someone in the comments has just someone in the chat, sorry, not comments, has just asked, will you read the comment often in the stream? Yes. So I just wanted to, early on in this, I didn't want to say it right at the start because right at the start there's not enough people, you know. But I do want to, it's near the start, so I should probably, now is fine to mention that I made some mistakes in my last stream that I did, and I've learned from them, and I'm going to be doing things a bit differently here. For one thing, it's just me and SRG. There's no 3 people. There's no 4 people. I'm going to be looking at the chat often, which I didn't do enough in that stream. And the reason I didn't do enough of that is because that was a stream that I'd prepared for really heavily, and I had a whole I had a document full of notes, and that was what was on my screen throughout the entire Hangout, just my notes. And so I didn't look at the chat at all, and that was a big mistake. And so this time I thought, there's no notes. I've barely done anything to prepare for that, save for putting my Carol Danvers poster up in the background, which took me 3 minutes. So like nothing basically. So yeah, I haven't. So this is just like going to be breezy chat, and I'm not going to overthink it, and I'm not going to be too stressed out. And and I'm just going to keep my eye on the chat, and it should go a lot better.
Yeah, that was kind of my plan for this chat too, especially since for you and I, this is also the first time we get to like actually talk to each other, because like we've just like interacted through comments or through social media interactions. And but speaking of the chat, is that a Kaban shirt that I am wearing? This is the T-shirt I got for the DVD box set of Midori Days. It's an obscure anime series where the main characters, woke up one day normally, except that his right hand, instead of being his right hand, is actually the girl Midori, who is a girl at a school that has a crush on her. And yes, a line directly from the show. It's like, do I want to say I love you to my right hand? No, this is ridiculous. So yes, it's a 13 episode long masturbation joke. And yet Midori is actually sweet enough. I bought my mom a copy of the show. So that's the shirt. And they had this Ghost in the Shell Sound on Complex, my favorite anime show proper or anime franchise. And anything Ghost in the Shell is good, except for the 2017 movie.
The effects were good in that, but I mean, if anyone's going to be kind towards it, it's me. I mean, it was made by the Wellington film industry for the most part, you know, people I work with. But they made the people that were running that show made a lot of mistakes, and they were kind of an amateur bunch that were kind of notorious. But I mean, any shoot that comes along that employs my colleagues, I tend to have a little bit of a soft spot for. Like I won't bash the Hobbit films, even though I know they're terrible, just because, like, you know, I know so many people who worked on them and fed their kids and stuff because of those movies. So yeah, but I mean, the Ghost of the Shell movie is, I mean, the best thing. The only really good thing you could say about it is that some of the visual effects were quite good.
Oh, I can say one more nice thing about the movie. It's that the Bato was actually pretty good. I was kind of wondering, he has his eyes in one scene, but then later on he has cybernetic eyes. That actually tied into the plot, and Bato is one of the few characters that actually had a character arc in that movie. And so I did really like that. And yeah, I kind of like that they have at least a bat sound sent off to Mamoru Ishii. But we're talking about like Captain Marvel, which I've seen twice last week. I saw it first on Thursday with my friends, and then saw it on Friday with my brothers because we just planned it on separate times. And I'm like, no, I really enjoy it. I wouldn't say it's like a great movie, but not because there's any glaring flaws. I say that it's a really good movie that engages me enough, but not so much to be a great movie. But it's definitely in that tier, the second tier of like Marvel movies of like pretty damn good. I mean, sure, I can like watch it again and I can really enjoy it. And there's a lot of things that I like about it that I can like talk about. But is it a great movie? No, really good, really enjoyable, and there's a lot to to like about that. I mean, and it seems like the cosmic Marvel Cinematic movies have been like actually solidly pretty good. I can't think of like a just okay one that's in like the Marvel Cinematic camp.
I can. There's quite a few ones that I'd say are actively bad. The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2 are both bad in my opinion.
Oh yeah, of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. I was talking about the Marvel Cosmic movies.
Right. Sorry, I didn't get that. Sorry. Yeah.
No,
well, I mean, I guess we first have to define what we're talking about, because I mean, the Marvel Cosmic is fairly obscure even among Marvel fans. And I mean, I don't know many people who have like the whole Annihilation and arc sort of thing, because it's really expensive and it's really complicated. And like, you know, because I'm gonna at some point hopefully do a video on my other channel about the Guardians of the Galaxy comics and versus the movies, and talk about, because that will cover like the whole introduction to what people think of as like the Marvel Cosmic reboot that happened with Annihilation, like about, what was that, like 15 years ago, something like that. Anyway, so and I guess I'll save discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy for the most part, although I will say that one thing about Marvel Cosmic is that it tends to be very strange.
Yes.
And they do tend to avoid the weirder, the really weird stuff from the comic. The most obvious example, I guess, is the dog in Guardians of the Galaxy.
You're right. The Cosmonaut dog.
Yeah, Cosmo, the talking Russian space dog. Yeah, and I mean, like, that is a great character. I can understand why they avoided it, but for me, like, that's the best part about Marvel Cosmic, is the quirky, weird stuff. And also, I guess how like ridiculously overpowered some of the characters are is also really fun. But that was my main concern, I guess, going into Captain Marvel, was that they would nerf the character. That was my big thing, and they didn't. They handcuffed her instead. I mean, I should probably have put in the description that there's going to be spoilers in this. Maybe I should do that. I should still do that. Actually, I'm going to do that right now. Do you want to just talk for a little bit while I do that?
Sure. And that was an interesting thing also about like Carol Danvers, is that like, she's literally actually handcuffed in like some scenes, but it kind of made sense for the story that we were telling. It was interesting that like have there'd be an origin story, but not structured the same way as the origin story. It's more of a self-discovery story, because you have that amnesia kind of like a thing in it. And it's so we don't see her full powered until like at the very end, because she's like the Marvel equivalent of like a Superman essentially. And but I didn't, and yet there's some complaints I've heard even from my brothers that like Brie Larson, not Brie Olsen. Brie Olsen is a porn star apparently. Brie Larson, it didn't have much of this.
I've never heard of that. So,
as I said, Brie Olsen mistakenly, and John Brockman corrected me and said that like it's Brie Larson. Brie Olsen is a porn star. I won't shame him for knowing that Brie Olsen's a porn star, because we don't do that here. Let's see. People said that like she didn't have much of she didn't smile enough. That's kind of like the man baby's complaint. But it's like, no, it's not like she's unemotional. And in fact, it's kind of like her give and take with like the Jude Law character. It's like Jude Law kind of like wants to control her in a way, and like tells her explicitly, don't show emotions. And so with Brie Larson, with Carol Danvers or Verve, showing emotions even at the time where it's just like even at the time where she's told no, she still shows personality there, even though she didn't like smile that often in the trailer, I guess. But also she's amnesia, so she's still discovering herself, and so there's a bit of that as well.
Well, okay, so in terms of my anticipations and concerns for the depiction of the character beyond her power level, something a bit more substantive than that. I was concerned about two things. I guess one is that Carol Danvers comics tend to have a sort of delicate balance between quite heavy subject matter, but usually handled in a fairly light way. Not always. I could think of one arc. I'm not going to go into specifics because it's like quite full on. But like most of the time, because Carol enjoys being a superhero. That's like one of the key.
Yes,
she has a lot of fun using her powers, and that comes up in the movie near the end when I think at one point she's flying around and she goes "Wahoo!"
Yes.
But beyond that, they don't really go into that. But I mean, at the same time, she doesn't have her full powers until near the end, so it also makes sense. The other thing about her is that one of the things she often does is she'll lead characters into like combat. She'll lead like troops and whatnot. That's one of the reasons why they picked Ms. Marvel to be the new Captain Marvel, is that one of the things about Captain America is he often leads troops around. You know, that's why he has a rank in his name, because he can do that. And it's the same thing with Captain Marvel. Although the original male Captain Marvel mainly only did that with Kree soldiers, not like Carol Danvers, who does it usually with when she's Ms. Marvel, and at the start of being Captain Marvel, she does that with human troops. Then she moved on to being like a space cop kind of thing to fill in the void with the Nova Corps. But I'm not going to go into too much detail because it gets insanely convoluted. But yeah, so those are the two things I thought they didn't really explore in the movie, but they can both be done later in other movies, other appearances. So I mean, you know, I wasn't too bothered. My friend, who's pretty reliable on the MCU films in terms of my his takes on things, said that he was a bit bored at some points in Captain Marvel, and I do. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. If the movie had any problem, that was one of them for sure. But yeah, I thought the main thing with a Captain Marvel movie is you're trying not. Rather than trying to make it the best thing ever, you're actually more, from the filmmaker's point of view, you're better off trying not to make it bad, if that makes sense. Rather than trying to make it good, trying not to make it bad. And what I mean by that is that Carol Danvers' continuity is incredibly, like, ridiculously convoluted, and there's so many, like, you'd have to talk about it. You can make a 6-hour-long video about it. It's so... And they streamlined her whole backstory, and like that was all really impressive, I thought. So yeah, I like that. For me, they avoided pitfalls that they could have fallen into, and that is why the film's impressive. More than anything I could say about its positive qualities, the lack of negative qualities, I think, is really good about it. And and especially in the first film of any superhero, that's one thing you've got to concern yourself about. So yeah, I feel the same way about the first Iron Man. A lot of why I like that is because it avoided a lot of traps that a lot of comic book movies fell into back then, and it didn't.
In fact, like even though we've like already established and already agreed that this is not a great movie, this is a really good movie, but like I remember a quote from like the director of The Crow and Dark City. In his opinion, what's a great movie is 3 great scenes and no bad scenes. And I agree with you that like if people just manage to avoid no bad scenes, then you come up with like a really good movie. And yeah, so it's like it's almost like when like the directors of like Winter Soldier plan to like make their movie almost like honest trailer proof in a way. They happen to make a really good movie apart from that's not quite correct. So that I'm referring to something that Sarah Z said. It was actually Civil War they were trying to make. So it was because of the honest trailers video for Winter Soldier that they decided to make tweaks to how they were going to do Civil War. So it was Civil War. The honest trailers series had an actual impact on the like how they made Civil War, which is kind of amazing, and like I think a first probably in terms of a YouTube channel influencing a major film. That's the first I heard of it. Yeah.
So like, it's pretty interesting, but yeah, like, I thought that was kind of. I can see why Sarah Z is concerned about that kind of stuff, I guess, but it's also just like, I don't think it's going to become a big thing. I don't think there's going to be a lot of pandering to YouTubers in the film industry. I get because there's a lot of that in the games industry, and I can get why people are concerned about it, the movie industry going that way, but I don't think it's going to go that way overall. So I'm not worried.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to one thing I think I can say that was really good about Captain Marvel is just the chemistry that Brie Larson had with all of the characters, mainly with Samuel L. Jackson, this was kind of also almost an origin story for Nick Fury, because we never seen him getting personal, as he would say in the film. And so this was not only a chance to see Captain Marvel for the first time, Carol Danvers, but also get to see Nick Fury before he was the eye patch Nick Fury. And so it was not quite a dual movie, but it was they're played promptly as well. And that's the thing. People have said the de-aging technology. Did they really actually use CG to de-age Samuel L. Jackson?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's an interesting thing, because that technology goes back quite a ways. That there was it's originated with face swapping technology that was used. I believe the first time it was used, or at least the first time it was used well, was on the Star Wars prequel films. They had they had some pretty old dudes engaging in fighting that they were not physically able to actually do themselves. So the way they did it, because they wanted George Lucas wanted to be able to get in close within those scenes, is that they just had a stunt person do even the close-up scenes, the close shots, and then they just use this face swapping technology where they put Ian McDiarmid's face onto, and the other guy was he's Christopher Lee. Yeah, they use that technology to just swap faces out, and then once they did that, they started messing around with face stuff in other ways, and that led to the sort of de-aging stuff. And I think certainly Captain Marvel is the peak of that to date.
Yeah, because
sorry, no, go ahead.
Because as compared to other times where we had de-aging, is well, I have heard of the face swapping thing before. I think also Gladiator had that, where they had stunt doubles in for some of those action scenes, and then they swapped that stunt double's face with Russell Crowe's face. But yet the de-aging we have seen, and we saw it badly in Tron Legacy. It was just the uncanny valley syndrome with the eyes of Jeff Bridges. But at least you could that kind of makes sense, because that's a computer program anyway.
I was just gonna say that it kind of does make sense in the movie, but I mean, in that one of the problems with doing that kind of movie is that you're in the uncanny valley and you got to navigate that is one of the pitfalls. So yeah, and they didn't successfully navigate their way out of that, I think we could argue.
I've only seen
Ashley is saying that the only MCU film she's seen is Black Panther. Well, if you're only going to watch one, if you're only going to watch one, I mean, it's a good one to go for.
Yes.
I would suggest watching Winter Soldier at least, because that film that's the only one that for me is just a brilliant film, regardless of any other context outside of any series or anything like that. It's just a brilliant movie, and I think they could have even taken the spy stuff further. And I kind of wish they'd made a Black Widow movie so they could do a full super spy movie, but they haven't done that. So that.
Yeah, man. I mean, Winter Soldier was so good because, it's Robert Redford. That's the thing. Okay, you got the legendary film and screen actor who's "Hello, I'm Robert Redford, the screen legendary extraordinary. Little kids in the audience, your parents might know who I am, but I'm here as the pencil pusher kind of bureaucrat that is running this agency. But don't worry, I'm with you guys. I'm with the good guys. I just sit down at the desk, but I'm with you 100%. And then at the end of the movie, he's just oh, and by the way, I'm secretly actually a Hydra agent, and this is part of the whole plan all wrong. And yet it worked. It's because his role his performance was so consistent throughout. It's just oh my god, almost mind blown. And plus, he's such a great actor anyway. But it made sense why if only until like that movie we got a screen legend to like play that role. But that was also a good role for him to play.
That was another one of my thoughts going into Captain Marvel, is that he might turn up.
Oh yeah, yeah. He didn't though, which is understandable, but like not to like diminish from the movie, because like we also got like a younger Agent Coulson as well, who didn't have like a big role, or he had a minor role, but it was like prevalent in like some scenes or not, and it was kind of cool to like seeing him as well, especially like DHified as well with like more hairline. And it was Console of Geeks. I was just listening to their like watch their video. He looked like that Dennis Quaid as well in the movie, and it was like, yeah, I can see that, but thankfully it did not sound like Dennis Quaid, so we can always easily go, oh yeah, that's Agent Coulson right there, and definitely Agent Coulson. So yeah, it's kind of neat.
And another thought I had on it was, it's kind of ironic in a way that they chose to have a comic relief supernatural cat entity thing. Because there's dogs that turn up in Marvel Cosmic a lot, and like there was an opportunity even in Captain Marvel for there to be a dog character, because there's the Inhumans, right?
And
they did a TV show of that and totally butchered the Inhumans, like honestly worse than I thought was possible. Like season 2 of S.H.I.E.L.D. was really, really bad, but like holy shit, TV series was something else. Anyway, because I love the Inhumans. They're awesome.
Oh, okay.
And like the dog, the giant teleporting dog, Lockjaw, who, because the Inhumans take over the Kree Empire at one point in the comics, so they could have had. Because instead of like when they, one of the things you got to think about from their perspective in terms of the filmmakers approaching this material is who's going to be in charge of the Kree Empire, right? And they decided to borrow the world mind from the Xandarians and an AI leader, which is it's a thing you can do. It basically proves my theory that they're never going to do a Nova movie, which is sad. Very sad. But that was how they decided to go with it. I thought maybe they were going to have Ronan being in charge of the Kree Empire, because he is in charge of the Kree Empire at one point in the comics. And then Black Bolt takes over, and I thought maybe you could have it where like you could have Black Bolt and a couple of the Inhumans characters without doing the whole Inhumans thing in the MCU. Just some way to get them in there, but they're never going to get in there. It's kind of sad. But yeah, there's some great characters in the Inhumans, and especially some of the spin-off characters like the current Ms. Marvel. There's some great characters. They have the potential for some really weird powers. So, because it's a gamble. It's like you know how they get their powers. They go into this thing called the Terrigen Mists, and then it just gives them a random superpower. And you don't know like how many superpowers are on the list of the like potential ones and what's on there. So it's just a total gamble when you go in there. And characters go in there, they come out, and then they go, "Oh, I've got super hair. My hair's really long, and it can hit people." That's a thing, That's odd. So it's really weird, and that's why I love it. It's just like it's kooky.
Yeah.
It's the potential for some bizarre stuff.
That almost reminds me of My Hero Academia, where it's just like everyone gets a quirk, and not all quirks are like combat oriented. And so it's kind of like that can be used as an interesting vehicle to like tell interesting stories with like unique powers. And plus, it's like sometimes there's just powers that's just not exciting, like metal detector. Okay, so you can have him as like a normal agent, a normal person. It's like, oh, I detect metal there. But I also mentioned that like I don't normally read the comic books, and sadly, but I watch a lot of like the movies and the TV shows as well, and the cartoons. I haven't watched much of the TV shows. I haven't caught up on like the Netflix stuff.
They're not that good in my opinion. The only one that I rate is Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones. The first season of Jessica Jones is better than the comic it's based on. a feat that's pretty incredible. And like it's almost unheard of. Like, but yeah, I mean, the second season is not as good, and I don't know. I mean, I don't really like any of them that much, except for the first season of Jessica Jones. And I mean, the second season's all right, but yeah, the other ones, and they totally that Iron Fist was a disaster.
I am not bothered with the Iron Fist. I'm just like, oh,
because I mean, there's potential there, but the thing is, you got to pair up Iron Fist with Luke Cage. That's the only way you could to do it. They should have done one show that was just those two together, rather than doing two different separate shows of them on their own. And then you play the two characters off each other and how different their background is and how different their worldview is and how they slowly influence each other and become like really, really close. And I don't know, that was just a cool storyline, and they should have done that. And when I first heard about it, I thought that's what they were going to do. Man.
Yeah. And but of like the other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, there's a lot we're gonna like talk about. But like I think why the cosmic cosmic universe for like Marvel has been a good introduction and for the movies is that Lindsay Ellis was like worried after Winter Soldier that all of the Marvel movies were just going to follow pace with the typical comic book movie of just being dark, grim, and gritty. And then here comes Guardians of the Galaxy with the vibrant colors and the soundtrack, and it's just wants to be first and foremost fun, and it worked well for the audience because some people just went to see it just because Dave Bautista was in there, and yet we're just blown away by the story and the characters, and like and that's the thing that also connected with Captain Marvel as well. I also really like the soundtrack to like Captain Marvel because it was like
I thought they underused that song by Garbage. You know, pour your misery down on me. That has so much like that's a great song, and it could be used for some really intense scene, but they just put it over like just basically a random scene. So that was I was a bit annoyed by that, but the rest of the soundtrack I thought was really well done.
I mean, my brothers thought that like they didn't like the soundtrack as much, or like, well, they knew all those songs, and so I was like, oh, there's that song, but they didn't. But they personally felt that it didn't connect with the scenes. Whereas, like, other than the Garbage example, either the song was a distraction from the scenes because they were just like playing over it, and it's just like, oh, is that 90s songs? But I know I thought sometimes that like, no, the song worked well with the scene. Once I heard like a Nirvana songs, it's like, oh, and I was listening to the lyrics. It's like, that's perfect for the scene. Oh yeah, I mean, because like it's Carol Danvers with Verve and just trying to like come against the supreme leader and like tells them like, no, that's not who I am. This is who I am, and it fits well with the song. So I thought that was an excellent use of like the soundtrack in that case. And also, if they have the soundtrack on CD, I'm kind of tempted to get that because I want to see if they have Samuel Mr. Postman by the Marvelettes as performed by Samuel Jackson.
It does have, there's a wiki page for the soundtrack, but I did check that out at one point, but I can't remember whether that was on there or not.
Just a like amusing thing.
I was going to say another thing that I really loved about the Marvel Cosmic stuff in the MCU so far is that in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, the villain of that is actually superior to the depiction in the comics. I thought the Ego, the world planet, the living planet. I mean, Ego's pretty cool in the comics, and it's pretty cool how it's a lot smaller than the planet thing. I think he says that it's about the size of the moon in the film, if I remember correctly. But it's a lot smaller than that in the comics. But it's pretty cool. Like you can fly. It's got these like tunnels inside it, and you can like fly around inside its head and stuff. But I thought that like they added so much emotional weight to that character that is not there in the comics at all, and like it just made it way better than it is in the comics. And anytime that happens, I'm happy.
Oh yeah.
There's stuff about the Guardians of the Galaxy main cast that's better. I think. Let's see. Star-Lord is a better character than in the comics, and Groot is a better character than in the comics. Those two, and I think Rocket is about the same. He's not as I would argue he's not as funny in the movies as he is in the comics, but he has those scenes, like there's that amazing scene in the first Guardians where they're in that drunken bar fight, and he talks about how he's a freak and how you know, he's just some scientist took him apart and put him back together, and now he's a monster. And I love that scene. Like there's nothing like that I can recall in the Guardians comics. He's quite lighthearted in the comics, and he's often thinking about. He's quite tactic. He's the one who does their like battle tactics and stuff, and he doesn't really have that role in the movies. He's more like a comic relief character who likes big guns. And he does like big guns in the comics too. But so, like, I thought, you know, most of the characters are either as good or better. So I mean, that's, you know, that's about all you can ask for, really.
I did real.
Oh no, go. Sorry.
I did really like Rocket and like a first Guardian of the Galaxy. I think so. Like it was good as comic relief, and it's like, and it's like one of the guys just because, and so that was a nice little like bathos and like an action scene, just action. You want my eye? Yes, but at the end, Lindsay Allison reminded me of this in her video essay. It's just like it's just after like Groot supposedly dies, and so Rocket lost his friend. He's just like sobbing, just like sitting there, and then Drax just sit down and then pets Rocket, and he freezes it at first because he's not used to having that kind of action. But then he finally just like lets Drax pet him, lets Drax come from him, and he's not used to that in his character. And so that was just like a great moment that they capture on the screen, because like it was also tied into like that previous scene where he just like almost had an outbreak of emotion, a visceral outbreak with like, I'm a monster, I'm been treated like and shit, I'm just like cut together. And to actually have comfort from someone else that more or less he just met was actually quite touching. So and he didn't have that quite. They didn't have that quite that good of a scene for just Rocket in like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, but everyone else had like so many great scenes.
Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is Star-Lord's movie, really.
True. Yeah, exactly.
And they can do that, but only once. If they do that again, I'd be annoyed. And what they really need to do is start adding some more members to the fucking team, like because when the Guardians comics start, there's a lot more members, like right from the start. Like there's at least 4 more because they start with 5 in their movie. So yeah, there's like 9, I think, something like that. And so like, you know, they've added the Mantis, and that's pretty cool. And you know, Quasar and what's his name, Adam Warlock, like they need to appear. The really heavy hitters, because I mean it does kind of conflict in a way, because the thing that's fun about the Guardians movies is that they're a ragtag bunch who can't really compete in terms of their powers with any single other Marvel cosmic character, but together they're really powerful, they're strong, which is kind of cool. They don't really, that's not really in the comics, because they've got some major heavy hitters on their team. Like they're a fucking tough group. Like they've got Adam Warlock and Quasar, and Drax is a lot more powerful in the comic. Like he took on Thanos in single combat and defeated him. So like he's real tough. So that's an interesting change. I think that's a really cool idea. And I'm glad they did that. But at the same time, I just want to see some of my favorite characters on screen. It's a selfish, it's a selfish thing, totally selfish thing. You know, even if it doesn't fit in the story, just crowbar them in there. God damn it!
Like, come on, at least show it up in the background. Show up as a cameo. You could have easily done a cameo for the Cosmonaut dog. It's like we at least got a cameo for Howard the dog, and it's like,
well, they did. The Cosmo does appear in that, but it's not the same character. It's just a dog in a spacesuit. And you know, because I'll never be truly happy with the Guardian films until I see a scene where Rocket Raccoon is snarling at Cosmo, the space diner, and Cosmo's snarling back, because they just have a natural dislike of each other, even though they know it's irrational and they should get on. They're on the same side. They just have an instinctual I'm watching you kind of thing, and it's a hilarious relationship in the comics. And like without that, the movies aren't the same.
Yeah, they're different. Yeah, a little different from the comics based on what you said. But speaking back to like how they nerfed the characters, I think for what they were designed to do, it kind of like
Well, they
these
nerfed the team. They nerfed Drax.
Right.
But overall, they didn't really fuck with the rest of the team. In fact, Groot is more powerful in the movies. With that scene where he puts the things out and kills that whole room full of dudes. He doesn't do stuff like that in the comics. So he mainly just fires guns, if I recall correctly. But oh no, he doesn't really fire. He like throws stuff and he like has like little wood splinter things but he doesn't kill whole roomfuls of people like that. So they upgraded him, but mainly for comic reasons. Like I'm cool
exactly.
Yeah, someone Justin in the comments has just pointed out Moondragon. Yeah, Moondragon. Yeah, Nebula taking. Yeah, I guess. But that I mean, it would be so cool to see, because that would be the first lesbian relationship in the MCU if they had Moondragon and Quasar, who are a couple in the comics. Yeah.
I did like Nebula in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 because like it adds to that family dynamic that was kind of like a theme of like Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I just really can remember the scene because like it was like Zoe and like Nebula fighting against each other, a sibling rivalries and something like that. But yet after this intense like battle of action scene, and then you just get that line of Nebula saying, "All you want to do is win when all I wanted was a sister," and just like, ooh, and that's the kind of heart of those movies, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, like, the whole choice of Nebula does kind of speak to what I was talking about before, which is the whole taking the weirdness away.
Oh yeah,
because like, you know, as Justin's saying, that the Nebula is kind of doing the Moondragon role in the films, and you know, if you compare the two characters, Nebula is mostly a cyborg, she's a cyborg that's mostly robot at this point. Which is an interesting character, but it's not exactly never been seen before. You know, we've all seen that character before. Whereas Moondragon is a bald woman, lesbian, who turns into a dragon sometimes. Like, that's way cooler in my opinion. Yes. She doesn't enjoy turning into a dragon and prefers not to do it, but when it happens, it's awesome. Like, yeah. Is there buffering going on? Oh, I hope not. I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me.
That doesn't look like it on like my end, so maybe
but it might not look like it for us if it looks like it for them. I don't know.
Okay,
but yeah.
Oh, it's just him. It's just Adam. It's
oh, right. Okay, all good. On the subject of the man baby outrage, because we should get to that. I think that stuff has gone so over the top now that it's just I find it absolutely just confusing more than anything. Some of the like, I mean, it's obviously misogynistic, and very misogynistic in some cases, and racist, because they like, you know, like the talk of Mary Sue's, you know, that you hear a lot. They never seem to, the only time that ever applies to a male character is when they're black, you know, like I've never seen them ever accuse a white male character of being overpowered in that way. I don't think I've ever seen that. And if they ever do that, it'll be a white male character who has like really left-wing views or something like that. You know, like, you know, that'll be what it is, you know, like, but so I was going to say, the one that I saw today, oh no, it was yesterday, that really just blew my mind was when someone was saying that about Arya Stark, that she's a Mary Sue. Arya Stark. Okay. If you actually think about that, the very first episode of Game of Thrones, what's Arya Stark's arc in the very first episode of Game of Thrones? What's her storyline? She wants to be a fighter, not a lady. That's her storyline in the first episode. Like, and consistently since then, she's training. She's been training since before the show starts.
Yeah.
When the show's starting, she's already been doing training probably for a couple of years, and she's doing it under Roderick Castle. There's a secretly training under a few people, and she trains under Roderick after talking to her father and stuff. And then she's training under Syrio Forel, one of the greatest fighters in the world, and the Hound and Jack and Hagar. Like, it would be absolutely bizarre if she wasn't one of the toughest fighters in the show by this point. That would be bizarre if she, like, you know, someone who has like obsessively dedicated themselves to becoming as badass as possible and as quickly as possible. Is just for 7 years she was training until she gets, because it was a comment on that scene where she's fighting Brienne. She has that fight in season 7 with Brienne of Tarth. You know what I'm talking about?
I have not watched any Game of Thrones, unfortunately.
Seriously?
But go ahead and spoil it for me. I don't care.
No, I won't spoil anything. I mean, it's not a spoiler, the thing that I'm talking about anyway.
Yeah.
Not really. It's just a random throwaway scene. But yeah, it's in a scene where she wins a fight, basically, against someone who is a really good fighter. She wins easily. And they're like, oh, look, she's a Mary Sue. And like, I don't know, if there's any character I've ever seen, watching them train for 7 years under some of the best fighters in the world, who isn't a Mary Sue at that point? That person is he's just sexist. That's all it is. That person is just blinded by misogynistic views, and that's just like our comrade Phoenix Rising 87 said in the chat. Someone actually called Mulan from the Disney movie a Mary Sue. Right? Yeah. Same kind of character. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's.
I don't know. I've never taken there was a while when I wasn't critical of like the trope of the Mary Sue that they like, okay, I accepted that's the thing, but it's like once I like started some people mentioning, it's like, how come no one mentioned Luke Skywalker or Anakin Skywalker as Mary Sue's? And that's where it's just like,
well, yeah, I mean, because that's exactly right. So I was watching a Mythbusters the other day, one of the old ones. Well, I mean, they're all old ones by this point, but there is a new young Mythbusters show, but it's not that I'm talking about. Anyway, they did an episode about Star Wars, and they covered the chasm jump scene in the Death Star where with the thing, and he attaches it to the back. They did it dumb because they were like, well, they obviously had the same technology as we do in a galaxy-wide empire that spanned 25,000 years. I'm sure they've got the same strength wire as us. But anyway, yeah, so that was a bit dumb. But the mere fact that they were looking at that scene kind of made me think about it, because it was the same day I saw that Mary Sue accusation of Arya. I was thinking that, how is Luke not a Marty Stew? We see him flying around. So and he talks about flying around. So we get the pilot thing at the end. That makes sense. But everything else he does, like, how does he know how to do that chasm jump thing? Like, where do you get that from? Like, how do you think of that? And how do you know that would work? Do you ever train for that? I don't see him training for that. Of course, the criticisms I'm making right now aren't valid because that's not what the movie's about, and you're overthinking it at that point. But my point is that you never see them say that. You never see them say that about stuff like about characters like that.
It seems like it's kind of like how only nowadays, like after YouTube 1.0, that's like we are now just critical or almost hypercritical of like logical inconsistencies in like movies and stuff like that. And just like Jack Saints like brought up, no wait, it wasn't Jack Saints, it was just right. The Dark Knight, that one also has logical inconsistencies if you just stop and think about that. And
so here's how it works, right? If you don't notice a plot hole the first time round while watching the movie, and you had to have it pointed out to you by someone in some work of critical analysis later, it doesn't count. That's fine. That I don't count that. Like the whole thing with Jurassic Park, where how did the T-Rex get inside the building? Why didn't we hear it walking up behind the people? It's really big, but you don't think about it when you're watching the scene because Steven Spielberg knows how to direct movies. So like, you don't think about it. You had to have it pointed out to you later. That doesn't count. But if you're sitting in the movie theater thinking about something like that, other than getting engrossed in the story, that's the story's fault. That's the movie's fault. And unless, of course, you are overthinking it, which is possible to do. But I mean, at the same time, while you're watching the movie, you should be getting swept up in it. Even the most, ridiculous person should be getting swept up in it. Apart from you're never going to get the what's that? Was that anarcho-capitalist bald guy cult leader?
Mr. Dapperton? No, wait, Stephen Molyneux.
Stefan Molyneux, right? You're never going to get the Stefan Molyneux of the world. He only ever watches movies with his agenda in mind and can never not do that. So you'll never get the hymns of this world. But everyone else, you'll be able to get, I think, just by directing well, you should be able to, pave over any of the inconsistencies in the story and stuff. So to a degree, I think pointing out inconsistencies is kind of like redundant in critical analysis, but also I think it can be informative for writers, because you can, even something like the Jurassic Park thing that nobody thinks of when they're watching it, that thinking about it and incorporating that into the story could maybe make it a better movie. Who knows? So so it's a tool a writer can have in their toolbox. So that's fine. But I don't see why the average moviegoer should care about stuff like that. I think it's a little bit. Having said that, though, there's a lot of stuff that is totally valid that's brought up, and then other people, like there was that video that Jack Saint responded to about the plot holes. That by Patrick Willems or whatever his name is. That video was pretty bad, and deserved the responses it got. Some of them were really aggressive, which was odd. It's just movies, dudes. Like, it's not a big deal. But even people I know who dedicate their entire lives to the film industry, and every waking second they don't take movies that seriously. So calm down. But I do think that there is a lot of stuff that is redundant. You mentioned Just Right before, the channel, right? Just Right.
Yes, exactly.
I think it was them that put out a video recently that is, because my film industry background gives me a bit of sort of leg up to figuring out some of the stuff that you see is just wrong. Okay, I don't think it was them actually, because I've just on their page now and I can't see it. The video I'm thinking of, but one of the mainstream critical analysis channels, one of the big ones on YouTube, put out a video about laugh tracks, and in the thumbnail it said filmed in front of a live studio audience, but those are two different things. Like, a laugh track is something that's added later. Wasn't there. Filming in front of a live studio audience, I mean, that makes every track a laugh track, because the laughter is loud and every microphone on the set will be picking it up. So they're all laugh tracks at that point. There's no laugh track in that. There's not like there's a special mic that is the only one that collects the. I don't know why people got the because those are. And because one of the things I do see critiqued a lot in pop culture is laughter in sitcoms, but that actually is important. For a type, if you're doing a certain type of show, you need to have the comic timing that that it helps the actors do the comic timing of the scene, and it's really important for them, and so it fills a role. Having said that, there are shows that took it too far, like what's that one with Al Bundy, Married with Children? Where they milked it. That was stupid. I think that was dumb. But on Seinfeld, for example, they didn't do that. They didn't let the audience do that. They just don't clap when Kramer comes into the room. So I think it's important for the shows that it's on. However, if you're doing a show that isn't filmed in front of a live studio audience and you're adding it later, why? Just don't do that. That's dumb.
Yeah,
even like on Scrubs, I think when they did bits that were filmed in front of live studio audience, they maybe they did have the. I can't, because they sometimes film stuff in front of live studio audiences, and I can't actually remember whether they included laughter or not. But anyway.
But Malcolm in the Middle did not include laugh tracks at all, and that was never in filmed in front of a live studio audience, from what I remember. But
it doesn't look like it from the way that they staged the scenes. I mean, I can't recall anything from the show too well, but it's a long time ago that I saw that show. I've seen some memes of it floating around. It's quite memeable, that show, Malcolm in the Middle.
Yeah. We haven't talked about like Thor Ragnarok, and that's another like Marvel's.
I've met Taika. He's a good guy.
Nice.
I almost worked for him.
I see.
well, not. I mean, it depends how you define work.
Oh, right.
The year under me at film school worked on one of his shorts.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, not my crew didn't do that. So we did. I mean, what we worked on there was the equivalent of that, some other thing. But anyway, yeah, yeah. He's a good director, and I'm glad he was chosen for that. He was really worried about how it was gonna affect his career.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
Well,
yeah,
because he's not that big, industry big movie guy. He just makes his own little things and does his own thing. But so he was a bit worried. But I think it's just open doors for him, and I don't think there'll be any downside to it, really.
No, I don't think so. Yeah. Because I did enjoy that one. I think that's the best of the Thor movies, and I like the first one. I also kind of like the second one, but I'll admit it's just an okay movie or a dud of like a movie. But like with Thor Ragnarok was like I love how they finally accepted these are space Vikings.
So yeah, well that's what I was gonna say is that the only one of the Thor movies that's actually part of the cosmic stuff is Ragnarok. Right. The others shied away from that. And I can kind of understand why, I suppose. The comics did to begin with as well. But yeah, I think Thor, he's that kind of character that works really well in cosmic stuff. And he does appear a lot in it. Iron Man is another one that appears sometimes in the comics. Iron Man's actually in the Guardians of the Galaxy at one point.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
See, someone's brought up the What We Do in the Shadows TV show. Yeah, I'm not really interested in that, Joe Justin, because it's about cops and
yeah,
New Zealand police, the police of my country, and I don't really want to watch a show about them, to be honest with you. See, I'm more of a. There's a series of TV shows in this country that are about the same family. One of them is about one generation, and then they did a prequel series about the older generation. And they're called Outrageous Fortune and West Side, and they're about a little petty criminal family, like kind of like the New Zealand equivalent of Sopranos, but like without all the big crime. Like they're just small time. It's the New Zealand version, so there's no murders. There's not a lot of violence. It's mainly just like extortion level stuff, not really violence. But yeah, like there's a bit of violence. But so I'm more likely to watch shows about them in my country than shows about the cops. So no.
The only good cops are the fictional cops, honestly.
Well, they are. I guess. I mean, they are fictional cops, but even so, like, I'll watch a show about American cops because I can detach myself from that a bit, you know.
Oh yeah, true. That's true.
But not New Zealand cops. Fuck that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a lot of great television I need to watch because, like I mentioned, Game of Thrones. I can understand the appeal of that. It's Dungeons and Dragons and boobs. That's
no, not correct at all.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that annoys me about the way that Game of Thrones is perceived. People go on about all the nudity in it. I mean, that was like the first 2 seasons or something. They totally pulled back on that, and there hasn't really been a thing for years. Like, really. The first season, definitely, I could see you making that criticism about, but like, that's not what it is. What it is it's Lord of the Rings, but about real people. Like it's about actual people. Lord of the Rings is fun, but the characters in it are all just fantasy trope archetypes. They're not real people. Whereas the characters in Song of Ice and Fire, they feel like they're flawed, they're rounded. There's no one who's just pure good or pure evil. They all have their different motivations. It's like Shakespeare written for a modern audience with fantasy stuff in it, basically. You know, give attention to characters, attention to good writing, good drama, some tragic stuff, some comic stuff, a lot of influence from history. George R. R. Martin's a big history buff, so there's a lot of stuff in it that's heavily influenced by real events and history. I mean, the whole overall plot of the show at the start. It's about a war, and it's based on the War of the Roses, which is a real war in British, so a civil war, one of several English civil wars. So like, that's what it is for me. It's got a lot of different. It's just well written. I mean, at the end of the day, that is what attracts most. Whenever a show's really big and it's a surprise, Like, for example, the big famous sitcoms like How I Met Your Mother, when those are successful, nobody's surprised. It's a formula. Those are designed to be successful. No one's like, hey, I've never seen this before. A successful sitcom, like, you know, that's not a thing. But
No.
you know, a high fantasy show that comes along and gets a massive audience, that's not normal. So you know, and whenever anything like that happens, it usually means it's a good show and it's well written. And that's usually what attracts those kinds of audiences. That's usually what you find. Like, why did The Wire attract such a big audience? Because it's really well written. You know, same thing. Why is Battlestar the greatest science fiction television show of all time? It's really well written.
I need to rewatch those because, like,
the second watch through is better than the first. That's why that show's so good.
Oh, okay. So now I gotta watch that because whenever something is you watch through a second time, you can like pick up on things you didn't notice before, or you see how there was like tiny little hits that you didn't notice before along the way through. That's always like great because that was my experience for like Young Justice, the animated show, which because it was well written for its plot and it's like its mystery or the surprise at the end. It was actually a true shock. I was watching with my brothers and they were like, oh shit. And yet when I was going back, I was like, oh, that's kind of clever. Someone would say that's like a continuity area there, but no, it actually fits in with like everything else. And so yeah, it's rare for that to happen where something it's like it's something that is like better the second time through. Most of the times you probably just like it's pretty good or it's like still as good, or sometimes you get like diminishing returns on your enjoyment of it. But like when something is just like either just as good or better the second time through, that's always like a rare thing. And I think those are the great movies.
It's rare because there's a specific way to do it and it's really hard to do. So what you got to do is you got to get the audience, you got to ask a question of the audience without the audience actually realizing they're supposed to think about it. And then at the end, they realize they should have been thinking about it the whole time and that it was relevant, but it was there. All the clues were there the whole time. But they just didn't quite connect the dots. And then they can go back and see, oh, these are all the examples of the show prodding me to ask this question that I didn't ask. And in Battlestar, I mean, I can't even say what the question is because it's too much of a spoiler. But I'm trying to think of an example that isn't a spoiler. So like, okay, so say, okay, here's an example. What if in Batman, it turns out the guy who killed Batman's parents actually, that's important. It's not just some random person, right?
Right.
That would be quite difficult to pull off. For one thing, because I mean, it's the sort of thing the audience is probably expecting a writer to come along and do.
Yeah.
They did it before already in the first Batman movie, the 1989 one. It turns out it was the Joker. So it's already been done badly. That's already a difficult thing against it. But it's possible you could do it well, though, because anything can be potentially done well. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, you get the audience the whole time. Who killed Batman's parents has been really important. The audience doesn't actually pick up on this, but when they go back and watch it again, they're like, holy shit, yeah, there's all these times where it was there and I wasn't realizing it. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. That's really hard to do as a writer. Like that subtextual thing that can be, upon revisited, it seems really obvious, but wasn't obvious the first time around. That's really difficult.
Yeah. But I don't mind like movies that are just trying to like not make it bad instead of like trying to make it great but then fail. I don't know if like there's any like movies in my mind where they try to make it great but then miss the mark.
The DCEU. The whole DCEU.
You're right. It's just like
see, I should actually talk about this. I should take this opportunity because I was going to do a video about the DCEU as well. I never got around to it, and I don't think I ever will. But the stuff is still it would still make an interesting thing to talk about. So, like, I think the DCEU just made the wrong choices at the start. Foundational choices. They tried to be different from the Marvel in the wrong ways and tried to be the same as it in the wrong ways. Like basically just flip those. They should have tried to be different from Marvel in all the ways they tried to be the same as it, basically. So here's an example, right? in the MCU, there's a guy who's in charge, and basically they're all his movies when you get right down to it.
Yeah, exactly.
The DCEU should have not done that. They should have gone, let's have them like more like an anthology where everyone, a director comes along, makes his own thing. They don't necessarily stylistically hold together that well as an overall cohesive universe, but they tell the characters appear common among them, and you get to play with that. That'd be really interesting. For example, right? So the director of Drive, Nicholas Winding Refn, right?
Ooh,
he was a guy, he wanted to do a Wonder Woman movie. I'm glad he didn't, because his Wonder Woman movie would have been too studio controlled. That's why he didn't want to do it, because that's why he dropped out of it. But so that would have been bad. I'm glad that the Wonder Woman movie went the way it did. But he wanted, my point is, he wanted to do a DC movie, right? What they should have done is snatched him up and gone, pick a character, any character. Look at this huge pantheon of characters we've got. Unlike Marvel, they don't have that same problem of all these other outfits owning the rights to things. They own most of their own rights still. So they got this huge group of characters. And they can go, look, pick a character or group of characters, make whatever you want, just do your thing, right? And then they could have, here's another opportunity for that. When Edgar Wright dropped out or was fired from Ant-Man, they should have immediately called him and gone, hey, make a character, any character, pick a character, any character, make your movie, do whatever you want. And, you know, and just get these big directors in to do totally different styles of movies about superheroes. So, you know, because that's what he wanted to do with Ant-Man, was make a movie that had a superhero in it, but wasn't really a typical superhero film. It was just meant to, it was like, let's drop a genre aspect, the superhero himself, take that out of its own confines of its own thing, the rest of the genre tropes of superhero movies, the genre confines, and drop them into something totally different, a fish out of water thing. That's what he wanted to do. And that would have been amazing, and it's never been done before, really. And that the whole DCEU should have been built on that, in my opinion. Yeah, that would have been fucking cool. And like, I mean, but it would have been, the thing about it is, that would have been brave. And they didn't do anything. They didn't make brave choices. The DCEU. No, they
did. They may try to make as many safe choices as possible, but like it's like trying to be like dark and gritty and edgy. And there's
that was their thing. That was how they thought. Let's differentiate ourselves from the MCU by being dark and edgy and gritty. That was the wrong choice. That was the wrong way to be different. That's not. The lightness is not what people dislike about Marvel. You know, no one on earth is going, these Marvel movies are just, they're too much fun. They're too light. That's the thing that's the appeal. That's the feature. Right. That's why we like them, because the rest of the world's so fucking heavy and depressing. And you get to just sit in a movie and just take it easy and light for 2 hours, you know? And like,
plus parts of Marvel movies never like take themselves too seriously either, because like when they're just about close to being cliche, there's always like something that happens, so our character says, "Are you done? Are you done?"
Right, they're self-aware, the MCU films as well. That's quite good. But there are things that people don't like about them, and one of them is that they do kind of, at least for a long while there, I don't think this is necessarily true anymore, although some people out there think it's more true now than ever, that the MCU does blur together, and that they're kind of uniform in a way. What the DCEU should have done was just go the complete opposite way from that, and have people criticizing them for the opposite reason. I think some people being out there going, they don't hold together very well as a thing. That would be interesting. That would be different. That would set themselves up as having a reason to exist, as to something different, a different thing from the MCU, not just having different characters trying to be the same thing, you know. And you know, you can see this in how they went they tried to go straight for the team up movie. You know, they went, okay, Man of Steel, then let's introduce a semi team up, and then let's do a full team up. 3 movies in, like that quick, and that was they should have totally gone the other way with that, like not had a team up for ages, I think, and made the very first team up a huge deal, because that was what the first Avengers movie was, a huge deal.
Exactly. There was like 5 movies up to that movie as well.
Yeah, exactly. And in order to compete with that, you don't just try and replicate it. You have to do something different. And so the way to do different to that would actually be to, let's not leave 5 movies. Let's leave it to 10, 12 movies. Have it really epic. And have this thing kind of like they were doing with Thanos, but known from the very beginning, built in from the ground up. With like, because the thing about the Thanos arc is that it started as a throwaway joke and then sort of slowly morphed into a real thing. And that meant that the depiction of the character is not consistent. That doesn't hold together. You go and watch that scene at the end of Avengers, he looks nothing like he does in Infinity War.
True.
You know? So like, it's a small thing, but it's a criticism that you can make. So the DCEU could have been all there from the start, knowing that, let's have a thing. We're going to build up. We know he's there from the start. Darkseid or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe even a team up of major supervillains, something like that. A huge, like 4 different major supervillains, something like that.
Yeah.
And so I just think there was a path for the DCEU to be amazing, and they just made every decision basically they made was wrong, except some stuff about the way they approached Wonder Woman was good. But
But then again, like I heard it from an interview when Wonder Woman came out that like Patty Jenkins had to like fight tooth and nail for like the No Man scene, and I thought like, so it's like it's a good thing that it's kept in the film because that was like the big epic scene of that movie because it's the first time we see Wonder Woman in her outfit. We see it off screen and it's like only like our leg is showing off a robe, but that was the first time we actually see Wonder Woman as Wonder Woman, and so I'm glad that scene's in there. So, but it's a real sign of the times that because she didn't just have difficulty with certain aspects of the film, she had difficulty getting the film made at all. It was an uphill battle for her to get behind the helm of that movie just to begin with. And it's amazing if you think about it. Superman was made into a movie in the 50s. Batman was made into a movie in the 80s. And then we have to wait till the 2010s to get a movie about the third most popular DC character after those two. It makes no sense. I mean, it makes sense from the point of view of patriarchy. It's a sexist society, and that's why. But, from a, one of the things that annoys me about capitalism is that people defend capitalism as being this sort of thing, like mathematical thing that's supposed to be rational. But what's rational from a business point of view about that decision? There's nothing rational about it. It's motivated by prejudice and nothing else. Like, if you think about it, the decision to not make a Wonder Woman movie for so long makes no business sense. Like, from a business point of view, it makes no sense. They could have been making billions from those movies, just like they had from the other franchises for years, but they didn't. They had to make
there's tons of that stuff in corporate culture. There's tons of stuff that doesn't make sense. That is totally irrational. Like I remember, because my mother works in HR, right? And she told me a story once. These people, they only hire fit, young, trendy people it's an office job. It makes no sense. Like, it makes no sense how fit you are in an office job. It doesn't matter what age you are, how trendy you dress. None of that stuff matters at all. But the guy who ran that office only hired fit, young, trendy people. It's totally irrational.
Oh man, it reminds me of an old Alan McBeal episode where it's just like Peter Mickelson's character who has the kind of like tics and the stutters. It was like an office full of like what the show called weirdos. There was actually a trans woman in there as one of the characters, but it's like she was seen to have like a fetish. But like all the characters were let go, and the main reason why the HR person of the customer service let go is because it's all about selling. And I say that's the critique of capitalism. It's just like it's not about the people, it's about selling, and that's maybe why that person hired young trendy people, because they want their customers to buy from this. Like, look at the hot trending people. I don't know. Well,
people just get ideas in their head that don't come from anywhere logical or justifiable. True. And like to say that doesn't happen in capitalism is just completely false. It happens just as much in corporate culture and capitalism as anywhere else, if not more. There's some really superstitious shit about capitalism, I mean, for starters, the whole thing's based on economic theory that was debunked 100 years ago. So well, actually longer than that, 200 years ago almost now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's I agree. Someone's talking about Shazam. I have to say though, it is quite easy to make a trailer look good from a bad movie. I agree that the trailer makes the premise look fun. It seems like they're handling it like what for those who are in the in the chat earlier, in the hangout earlier, I was talking about how one of the things I didn't like necessarily about Captain Marvel, although I mean it wasn't a huge deal, was the fact that in the comics she has a lot of fun using her powers, and she like she's kind of joyous character when she's being a superhero, and that seems to be the backbone of the Shazam movie. That's what they've gone for with the Shazam movie, is that look how much fun he's having. It makes total sense with the character. You know, a child who becomes an adult with this. That's perfect choice.
I mean, how would you act if you were 15 and you got like Superman-like powers?
Exactly.
Yeah, and the film seems to be, at least from the trailer, it seems to be like self-aware enough to be like, wait, I have to say Shazam? Say it, okay, Shazam. So I kind of am looking forward to like the other Captain Marvel movie that's just in the month away. Going back to a little bit to the side that in the live chat, I have seen Aquaman. It's pretty good. I'm not going to say it's great. So it's kind of like if you're, I'm not going to say, oh, if you're not interested, yeah, you can skip it or just wait for it to be on HBO or something, or like easy to rent and stuff like that. Because I did enjoy it. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was better than like Justice League, which is damn near praise, right? But like it was fun. I mean, I thought they like did enough right things, like having enough like bathos in there in the certain scenes, and like good chemistry between like the two leads. So unfortunately, the second main character's name I totally forgot. But I also thought the action sequences were done quite well. And you can say this about like Aquaman, is that the underwater world, they created a whole new world, and that's something to like that's respectable to see in Aquaman. But I won't say it's like a great movie or like even a really good movie where it's like a strong recommendation on like Captain Marvel. I say it's like, if you're interested in see it, yeah, go see it. I mean, it's like, it's a fun movie and definitely better than the rest of the DCEU. And what's so disappointing about the DCEU, they know how to make good movies before, because there was the Richard Donner Superman, there was the Batman movies as well, or the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. So they can make good movies, but like they just want to go with like dark and gritty and go with the most popular comics from like the 90s, the dark ages of comics. And hey, it makes sense in the business sense. They're the two comics, like the Death of Superman and the Dark Knight Returns or something like that, the Frank Miller comic. They were the most popular comics at that time, or the highest selling gross in some comics. So let's just make a movie with like both of them. So and I've only seen Batman v Superman once.
I've never seen it, and I never will.
Don't bother.
I don't. Well, I mean, Zack Snyder's an incompetent director, so I don't know why I watch. It's like, why would I make a pastry made by an incompetent pastry chef? Like, you just don't do that. So like, for like, I have respect for the job of film director enough that I won't watch an incompetent person's movie. What's the thing? He doesn't know how to direct movies, and that's what he does. So he probably should know how to do that. But like it's amazing. I at one point was going to do this huge takedown of Movie Bob, where I have a massive go at him for being a Zack Snyder fan. But I don't know. I can't bring up the same kind of like enthusiasm that you need to make a whole video thing like I can on politics. That's one of the reasons why I stopped doing Magic Theater stuff, is because when you're in a phase where you feel a lot of passion about politics, it's hard to feel that same kind of like when you're looking at all the issues, when you think about like a movie franchise, is it really that big of a deal compared to like actual important things? No. So like, having said that, though, you still need an outlet. You still need something to do. So you're not always in that mode, because you just go insane constantly like that. So there's there is a good reason to watch stuff and talk about it. But to do a takedown where I'm like getting serious about it and getting really into it, I can't summon up the will to bother with that. The material is there, because God knows Movie Bob is not very good as a critic, and he doesn't know very much about what he's talking about, and he knows a lot about comics. I'll give him that. But he doesn't understand enough about filmmaking to understand why Zack Snyder is terrible at it, and it's not someone who you should pay attention to. I see.
And that was kind that's kind of interesting for me to hear, because like I actually kind of like I did idolize Movie Bomb for a little bit, but then was like, I kind of watched that back, and it's like sometimes I still watch his like movie reviews, but like it's been a while since I've done that. In fact, I actually mentioned him in my like Upgrade review, because it's like I did not enjoy Upgrade. I was like, what did I just saw? What did I just saw? And then I saw Movie Bob praise it, and he's not the only critic there. That's like, okay, I guess there was something I missed. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, where to go from now? I'm thinking. There's not. Oh, there is like there is like a video series that's like a takedown or the deconstruction of the DCEU that the Renegade Cut did, and that was like a 4-parter, and I thought that was like really interesting, especially going into like how the fans' reactions and the tribalism of the DCEU and how they kind of like go into like Discord of comparing the DCU versus the MCU, and that's a video series that for any of those that are like interested in seeing like a deconstruction of the DCEU movies, that would be like a one to like watch Renegade Cuts, and Renegade Cuts makes good videos in general. I've been like enjoying his like videos.
Did I can't remember if I brought this up or not, because I had meant to bring up Renegade Cut in the last hangout I did about this bizarre interaction I had with him. I don't know if I can't remember if I even mentioned it or not now.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I have 2 channels, right? So I've got 2 accounts.
Yeah.
And I oftentimes will watch the accounts are the way I have it, my sort of home situation set up is that on some of my computers, one account is the default login, on other computers, the other one is, right? So I will naturally watch videos under different accounts. Sometimes I'll watch the same video under both accounts if I want to watch something over again. And Renegade Cut videos are the sort of videos I can put on in the background, and I can watch them multiple times on both my accounts, you know.
Right.
So this is how I got into the reason I'm saying all that is because that's how I got into the scenario where I realized that some of my comments had been hidden, or like my account overall has been blocked on that page. And the reason it was blocked is because he made a video where he was describing what socialism is, and he got it right in his definition at the start. He got it right. Okay. I was glad. He was like, okay, that's good. And then later in the video, he said something. He changed his definition and was talking about post-war Europe as being socialist. And I brought this up. I said, you know, it's true that the people who were in charge of the left-wing parties in Europe at the time and instituted the social reforms were socialists, right? Okay. But that doesn't mean the reforms they instituted created a socialist society. They didn't. And that's all I mentioned, right? And that I noticed that on my other account, I can't see those comments. But on my main account, I can still see them because you can always see your own comments.
Yes, exactly.
But I can't find them anywhere on the other account. So I noticed I was blocked. And I just found it was a bizarre reason to block. I was totally civil. I found it odd. And I haven't engaged with the channel since then. It's a shame, really, because I did very much enjoy his videos, and his video about Mulholland Drive is amazing. It's one of the best pieces of critical analysis I've ever seen. I rewatched, I think for the 3rd time, Mulholland Drive while I was watching the video because it was that good. I was like, I need to actually get some context of what he's talking about here, and so I went side by side. And it was a really interesting experience. So, like, you know, I was really gutted when that happened. But
it's not a YouTube live stream if there isn't some YouTube gossip.
But it's really funny. Bunny in the Box is saying that Jay Bauman, one of the Red Letter Media guys, that's who Jay is, right? I'm pretty sure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's where he is from. He said he was watching the Watchmen commentary and he turned it off halfway through because all the reasons for doing stuff was it was cool. You know who else thinks that way? Michael Bay. If you listen to his director's commentaries, that's everything. It was cool. I thought that looked cool. I did it because it looked cool. And you know, to the degree that like it's actually offensive. Like at one point he's like, why did I put flames on Optimus Prime? Because it's cool.
Oh, Oh,
Like,
geez.
no, it's not. It's not. And even if it was, that's not a good reason to do something.
Yeah.
You're making a narrative here, dude. You're not making a series of still images. Like, it's supposed to be a story. Like, Jesus Christ. It's not. It's not a like. I think a lot of the way that people like him approach movies is if they're making an ad for visual effects companies. Like,
my god.
Here's what check out what visual effects companies are capable of now. Look at this.
Yeah.
Isn't this cool? And it's like the other directors might look at that and go, "Oh, hey, I can use that to make Pacific Rim, for example. Like, I can use this to make cool stuff." And for that reason, I guess it's nice that Michael Bay exists, but that's not a good reason to spend billions of dollars on movies. Like,
something's better if like I heard that he makes some good movies. I haven't seen them myself. I thought The Island was okay, but it's just not great or something. But the Bumblebee movie was actually much better when it's like it's not in like that kind of director's hands or like someone that wants to tell a good story. Because I thought the Bumblebee was like, I don't know if it's the best Transformers movies or the second best, because there's still the other awesome Transformers movie, which I actually got
the cartoon from the 80s. Yeah, I like it. I think it is quite flawed, the 80s cartoon. But it's flawed in ways that are kind of fun. So
yeah. Or endearing, as it were.
That's what I was going for. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's weird. And then
I was just going to say, when you were talking about Michael Bay making good movies, I don't think he ever has, personally. I think I think the Island is the one that people bring up, but The Island still would have been a much superior film if it was done by a more skilled director. The fact that it was like there's a lot of films that skate through on their screenplays. That's one of them. Another one is a New Zealand film, Once Were Warriors. Everybody thought that Once Were Warriors, the director of Once Were Warriors, was this mastermind who was going to go on to be a big deal because Once Were Warriors was such a good movie. But Once Were Warriors was such a good movie because the screenplay was so fucking good, and like he just happened to do well with it. Everything he made after that has either been terrible or just bad. So like there are a lot of movies like that. I think The Island is in that camp where the idea behind it, the basic premise, the screenplay carried it, and it's like because that's one of the reasons why I dislike Neil deGrasse Tyson's film opinions on film, because he said he said once that he thinks The Island is better than Gattaca, and that's like factually wrong. That's not correct. That's like no. I mean, I could say that The Island is a decent watch. I have a lot of problems with it, but it's at least entertaining. But Gattaca's a masterpiece. Like, that's one of the greatest films of all time. Like, you can't. That's just wrong to say that anything Zack Snyder's made is better than that. But yeah, I mean Michael Bay. Sorry. I was going to bring up though when you're talking about that the one that comes to mind for me is the do you know the film critic oh god, what's his name? Mark Kermode?
No, I don't think so. Their name doesn't ring a bell.
He's a British film critic, and he's got a YouTube channel. They're just clips of him on the radio criticizing movies in his radio show. But he and I don't see eye to eye on everything, but for sure, no, I don't feel that way. There's no critic that I totally identify with. But I think he's at least entertaining. When we disagree, I still feel entertained. And the one funny thing about him is that he's an ex-Maoist. So yeah, it's funny that because he used to be a leftist. He's not anymore. He's like he's one of those middle-aged ex-radicals. It's funny with it because like the anti-capitalist stuff still comes out. I remember in one he did an infamous review of Sex and the City 2, where he just criticized it along class lines for its class politics. And at one point he starts singing the Internationale. Like it's fucking great. But so he didn't sing it in French though. I remember commenting on the YouTube video, why did you sing it in French, Mark? Come on, haven't you learned the French version? Call yourself a leftist. For the record, I haven't learned the French version. I'm not being serious.
It's yeah, I'm not going to bother learning the French version because I'm sure I'll butcher it. And I have a French friend who has a fondness for guillotines as well.
Well, my thing is, I don't actually think the lyrics for the Internationale are that great compared to some of the other great songs of the labor movement and the left. Like there's ones I'm going to always prefer, like Workers' Song. Where I'm trying to think of the lyrics. This one's for the workers who toil night and day by hand and by brain to earn your pay. For no more than your sorry, how does it go? Shit. Oh crap. Toil for no more than your bread, you've bled for your countries and counted your dead. Yeah, like there's a lot of like great lyrics in the in that stuff. And I don't know, I don't think they're that good. So I'll go with other stuff. I'm not bothered. But yeah, what the fuck did I bring up Mark Kermode anyway? I'm trying to remember now.
Okay, so
I was talking about right. So Kermode, he hates Michael Bay, right? Because he's a good critic.
Oh, okay.
And he some of his fellow critics were telling him, actually, you know, Michael Bay he's done an indie. So, and this one's really personal. So this is going to be his good one. And they were talking about Pain and Gain, right?
Right. I heard about that.
And
one,
yeah. And so Kermode goes to see Pain and Gain, and he hates it on such a visceral level and is so offended by it. He is so passionate in his takedown of it. It's brilliant. Like that. That's worth going to. But yeah, his YouTube channel is just called Kermode and Mayo, like written as one word. Okay. I'll write it in the chat. But yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah. I actually, now that I think about it, it's like of movie critics, I did used to like either didn't really watch, or sometimes I did, but I did read a lot of like the Roger Ebert's reviews, and I thought, and like unfortunately, Gene Sickles kind of like did pass away by the time I started like reading movie reviews, and so it was more like Roger Ebert than as opposed to like Roper. But the amount of things, I don't know if there's any. Well, then again, I don't really watch much movie reviews, and sometimes we'll check out like a review score aggregates, as because sometimes it's like. If I was interested, sometimes I was like, oh, I'm kind of interested in Instant Family. If they like, then it's like, oh, wait a minute, it's getting a good review score, so I'll go see it. And like, I laughed and cried and laughed in the same scene. So like, I don't remember how last time that happened. So it was like, that's why Instant Family is a pretty good movie, and that's why it's that one's special to me. But yeah.
By the way, I remember I recommended you to see Pride. Did you ever watch that?
No, I haven't. I haven't got around to it. That's.
You should.
I really should.
That movie's brilliant. You clicked like on I posted a clip from that movie where they sing Bread and Roses, and I remember I saw you click like on that. I was like, yeah, well that's why you should go see Pride.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
It's LGBTQ rights plus trade unionism in one movie. It's fucking brilliant. And it's proto intersectionality. It's great.
Okay, and there's no excuse for me either because it is on Amazon Prime, so I don't even have to pay money to see it. So yeah, but that's why I kind of like say I'm a pretend movie reviewer, because like if you think of like the long list of like the classic movies or something, which sometimes is American centric, which is the valid criticism, there's a lot of movies that I haven't seen. There's some that I have, like I did eventually see Vertigo, and what was interesting, I was a teenager, and so I know that Vertigo is a great, fantastic movie, and I was sitting there watching it, and I'm like, I am bored by this whole movie.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think if I was going to recommend Hitchcock, I definitely wouldn't recommend Vertigo to someone who's not familiar like with that. Right. Vertigo is a good film, but it's not like that's not where I'd go. I'd go Dial M for Murder, like Dial M for Murder or Family Plot, or I don't know, one of his weirder ones. Like he's got a lot of Marnie, maybe, like he's got a lot of the one where he gets there's this guy who there's this woman who marries this dude. She's a second wife, and he goes on and on about the first wife all the time, constantly talking about the first wife. It starts like she starts like getting really creeped out by it, and it turns into this whole thing. It's like a really interesting thriller. I don't know, like people always bring up the Psycho and Vertigo, and the reason they bring up and Birds, and the reason they bring those movies up is because they were innovative. And
Okay.
but if you go back and watch them now, that parts doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter for the casual viewer. So like, I'd go for the ones that for me have stood the test of time the best. Dial M for Murder is mainly set in one room, so it's pretty interesting. And like it's a thriller that's mainly set in one room, so that's quite difficult to do. And yeah, I don't know, like Family Plot is this like really weird oddball comedy, black comedy, crime caper thing. Yeah, he's got a lot of good movies. I certainly wouldn't go for the big ones to start with, though. To Catch a Thief, that's quite good. His films, the best ones in terms of ones that just casually watch are the ones that have an interesting idea at the core of them, motivating everything. And like, so Dial M for Murder, all set in one room, or To Catch a Thief has a whole identity thing to do with it, where he's getting blamed for the things done by another person and all this stuff. Yeah. It's like Shakespeare. Another video I had planned to do on Magic Theatre that probably never get around to doing is about Shakespeare, about how there's a lot of people who resent Shakespeare because they were taught it at school, and taught his stuff at school, and they didn't really get it, and it was just really annoying, and the language was annoying, and they didn't really see the value in it. And I think it has devalued Shakespeare to make it sort of uniform, to make it compulsory in that way, because Shakespeare was a genius, and like some of the stuff he wrote was just brilliant. And the one I was going to use was the Tomorrow Soliloquy, which is from Macbeth. And it's about death and mortality. And it's fucking poetic, and it's awesome. And like, I don't know. There's a lot of these things. Rear Window is one that's brought up. Rope. Rope is good for technical reasons, and it was also good for innovative reasons. But I think that one would probably bore a modern audience, potentially. I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend Rope. For a film student, yes. For sure, but for a casual viewer, yeah, don't know. Rear Window, though, absolutely, definitely good idea. So that's another one. See, it's just a good idea for a story that's at the heart of it, where a guy who he's like got his leg hurt and he can't leave the house, and so he takes up just looking out his windows all the time, sees a murder, his neighbor commit a murder. That's a good idea for a movie, Oh, crap. Am I alone? How long has that been the case? Where the hell did SRG go? Ah, blue screened. I see. Oh, God, I'm going to have to fill the air. Well, okay, here's an idea. I've got I've got Premiere open. I could show you all the ridiculousness of this video that I'm working on. Oh, application window. Why is it? Okay, here we go. Should work. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I'm at. That's an hour and 3/4, and I've done all the audio's done. I think I might end up adding stuff, but I probably won't. Hopefully not, because make it even longer. I might cut some stuff out of the audio, but that'll hopefully be the only way it changes. But the video is I'm over halfway, but not much over halfway. So yeah, you could see how I'm progressing on it. Anyway, that's probably enough. So I hope the first invite I sent to SRG should still work, so I don't think I should have to do anything for him to get back. What else can I talk about? Let's see. How do I entertain people? Stuff and things and Star Trek. Star Trek's good. I've been watching a lot of Star Trek recently. I been doing a watch through experiment where I basically just set all the Star Trek shows and basically just picked out all my favorite episodes, all the ones that I think are really good. Well, just basically cut out all the ones that I don't think are good. Basically, is more apt way of looking at it. Or there are some episodes that I don't necessarily like in the watch list that are there just because they advance certain storylines and they kind of have to be there. But mostly it's just the good ones. Discovery of the only ones. So I made this list before season 2 of Discovery, so it's only season 1 is in it, and I only went with the arc in the Mirror Universe, which is 4 episodes long, I think, and I also put in the episode with oh god, what's his name? Harry Mudd. I put the Harry Mudd episode in with the space whale thing because I thought that one was quite good. But yeah, and I just went through all the shows. It's pretty centered around DS9 because DS9 is my favorite show. So there's more of DS9 in it than any of the other shows. It's quite a lot of TNG though. Decent amount of Voyager. Yeah, there's quite. I mean, Voyager has a lot of missteps, but there's some good episodes that I've put in there. So yeah, I've just been watching that through with some other people, and it's been interesting. It's been interesting watching what they have enjoyed and what they haven't. Like, for example, the Voyager Borg stuff gets shit on a lot for good reason. But SRG's in the chat. He's talking. Just ask him if he can rejoin. Anyway, yeah, and but the one where 7 of 9 goes and they have that operation on the Borg sphere, and then 7 of 9 goes and rejoins the Borg. That one was very well received. And I thought that was interesting because there's a lot of people who think that by that point in the Star Trek universe, the Borg are already like dumb. It probably helped that I didn't include some of the weaker episodes of the Borg storyline. For example, the one with Law in it. I thought that was dumb. Steve Shives took the piss out of that one in a video he did. But so I didn't include that. So I think that's probably why, although the whole Borg Queen thing, I mean, that's pretty dumb. I don't know. But yeah, so I was surprised by how well that was received. But yeah, I'm running out of stuff to say. See, this is where I should have taken notes. Yeah, the backlash. I guess I could talk about that. Yeah, Dark Frontier. I think the episode's was well received just because it's quite well cut together. It's got a good like tension scale of like people. It's got a good sort of structure in terms of escalating the tension, making it exciting the whole time, and keeping the audience engaged. I think it's just quite well made. I do think there are some aspects of big universes like Star Trek that once they're tainted, you just can't bring them back. Or if you can, you have to wait a long time before you can. Like, for example, the Sleeping Angels are a bit overused when Stephen Moffat was showrunner of Doctor Who. So I think it'll be a while before they reappear again. That sort of thing. Well, I mean, I should give SRG a bit more time to get.
Okay, I'm back.
But if he can't, I didn't really prepare for this to be just me on my own sort of
scenario. Can you hear me?
So I don't really know. I think I'll have to.
Hello.
Oh, he's back. Hello.
Oh man, that was
Thank
the second
God.
time.
Perfect timing.
You were just running out of like the things to say. You were talking.
Well, I mean, I'd run out of things to say a little while ago, but
It's true. Yeah, it's like it's just suddenly happened. This computer that I have, which is like, it's just a laptop, but it's like my one computer that I use. I got another computer, but it's like 6 years old, or another laptop that's 6 years old. Then it just blue screen on me, and this is the second time that it's done it in like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I. Hopefully something that I can like fix. Otherwise, I hate to like get a new laptop. Anyway, I'm back, and like you were waffling as you were talking about like Deep Space Nine and Star Trek, and I have not seen Discovery yet. It's kind of like I haven't pulling up the $6 for like CBS access online to like go watch it. So I don't know if there's any other avenues I can like see at least this season 1, but like I'm looking forward to it once I finally see it. But like Deep Space Nine is definitely my favorite of the Star Trek series because like,
well, I can tell you that you're not going to like it more than DS9. So
okay,
DS9 is still going to be your favorite after watching Discovery. Discovery is not bad, but and is quite good. But it's not DS9. DS9 is like, well, I mean, DS9, you could see how DS9 influenced Battlestar Galactica because it's by the same person. Well, the last several seasons of Deep Space Nine, which the showrunner was the same guy who did Battlestar Galactica, Ron Moore, and you can see a lot of the because this is one of the things I wanted to bring up is that there's storylines in it that are very similar to storylines in Battlestar. Like, for example, when they lose control of DS9 and have to retreat, that's very similar to there's a whole storyline where DS9 is occupied by the Dominion.
Right. Oh yeah, I did love that story arc. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very similar to the new Caprica storyline from Battlestar Galactica, where they're on a planet and the Cylons are in control and they're occupying the planet, and it's very very similar. That DS9 doesn't get as gritty with it as it like doesn't get as hard. Like, there's no suicide bombing in DS9. There is one battle, at least one battle, where the Jem'Hadaris doing suicide runs, like suiciding themselves on the ships. But that's not quite the same as like a dude just with a bomb strapped to his chest. That's like a bit more heavy.
So it's like you want to like talk about like the backlash that's happened to like a Captain Marvel or something like that.
I guess we should cover that a bit more. I mean, I think we've made my main thesis is that it's just gotten ridiculously pathetic now, and has gotten to the degree that they've gotten so over the top that it's like any character who is not a white male who is powerful in some way will be criticized and attacked, regardless of context. It used to be that they would come up with contextual justifications for it. They were at best thin and at worst complete garbage, but they were trying to do something. That's some kind of justification. Nowadays, they don't even do that. They just call anything a Mary Sue and just move on, like with no reasoning behind it. It's just absolute to the point where I often wonder if they've actually seen the thing they're talking about. Like that person who called Arya Stark a Mary Sue. Like, I honestly think maybe he hasn't seen Game of Thrones like that, because that'd be the only way you could think that. Like, it's I mean, other than being a massive set, like, because that's the thing is you don't need to. It's Occam's razor. I don't need to go to him being a person who hasn't seen the show but claims to have. You can make sense of the scenario just by explaining that he's a misogynist, and that's all there is to it, really. He just doesn't like women, and therefore came to that conclusion. That's all there is to it. But it does come off like they have no idea what they're talking about. And the Doctor Who one is actually another great example. Well, I never really talked about that in a hangout before or anything, so we could cover that. Are you a fan of Doctor Who? Like,
I am a fan of Doctor Who, but it's kind of like, okay, so it's like my parents are definitely fans of Doctor Who. They did watch it like when it was like Tom Baker or some John Pertwee and then like Peter Davison, but it's like I was so young, I was like 3 or 4 or 5 years old, that like if you point me to an image of it, I can point you at it and say I've seen that as a kid. Other than that, it's kind of like after the fact that I've like rewatched some like a classic Doctor Who, and yes, I can kind of say that like I was a fan of Doctor Who before it's cool to be a fan of Doctor Who, but like that's just an ingest. But I have not watched any of the recent Doctor Who since, like, in fact, I needed like that's another show I need to like catch up because like the last episode of like Doctor Who I saw was actually of like Chris Eccleston, and it was the 14 Aliens two-parter.
Right.
So I really, but like, you know, it's like it makes total. I don't the man babies that just like the person can change their body, they regenerate.
Well,
What's
so
wrong with them regenerating to a woman?
There was a whole series of things that the writers of the show intentionally did groundwork that was laid to prepare the way forward as well. If you listen to the man babies, you'd think this came out of nowhere. They're just completely out of the blue with no warning whatsoever. But people who think that just haven't watched much of the show. Because for starters, there's an episode called The Doctor's Wife, which is about they pour the TARDIS is a living being inside it. Well, they pour the TARDIS being inside a person, and it becomes like a character in the show just for that one episode, and it's really cool.
Interesting.
It's written by Neil Gaiman, if I recall correctly. That episode.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Anyway, in that episode, they directly reference a Time Lord who regenerated who regenerated into a woman. Then they did it with the Master, the other big Time Lord character in the show. The only other big Time Lord character in the show just did that. Had just gone through an arc where she was regenerated into a female character. They like literally in the previous season had done that, and like, and they're going, "Oh, where did this come from?" It's like you haven't seen the show. You haven't. No. Even in the old show, they were a little bit. They never showed a male Time Lord regenerating into a female Time Lord, but they were always a bit odd with gender, intentionally, to make the Time Lord society different from humans. They didn't want to have traditional gender roles too much. They did end up having traditional gender roles in it because the people writing the show were in a traditional society, so you can't help that slipping through. But they were trying at least to put that to take that stuff out. So so even right from the beginning, it's been the kind of show that would do something like that, and it's not surprising at all. So that's a great example of where I just have to think, these people aren't fans. You can't be a fan of Doctor Who and think that has come out of nowhere.
Exactly. But it's like we've seen this. It's just like it's like from like Mad Max. Oh my God, there's women in Mad Max Fury Road, and then the next year it's like, oh, this Ghostbusters movie is going to like ruin my childhood, and it's just like, and then Star Wars. Oh my God, there's a woman and a black character.
Ocean's 8. Don't forget.
Oh yeah,
Ocean's 8 was another one. Although that franchise doesn't have as much cachet, so that wasn't as big. But there was a negative reaction to that too, because of course there was. But the
women cannot have their own thing, or it's just like, it can't be an established thing. They must have a totally created character. Oh, you mean like Captain Marvel, which was always pretty much carried down, so it's always a woman. There's Captain Marvel, but it's like the Captain Marvel that we know of is always, if I'm correct, it's always been like a woman. So it's just like,
Captain Marvel, the name Captain Marvel used to apply to a male character, but that was a long time ago. That character hasn't been a like important character that had comics about them for decades, and they basically were resurrecting a dead name when they made made Carol Danvers. And the whole way, if you actually read the comics, it makes perfect sense. She goes through basically because there's the Ms. Marvel comics that came before Captain Marvel, right? And the last iteration of the Ms. Marvel comics, which was, I believe, volume 4. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I checked. But that series is about her having an identity crisis. That's the whole storyline of it. She has an identity crisis, and it ends with her becoming Captain Marvel, assuming a new identity. That's the whole. So they spent a whole that arc was like. There's like a lot of trades in that series, so it's like 2 years at least, I think, of Ms. Marvel comics, like 20, like lots of comics, having her explore her identity and decide to change, and so that it wasn't a surprise like when it happened, and it made perfect narrative sense for her to do that, and then it also made sense for Kamala Khan to come along and become the new Ms. Marvel. That's an established name that's not being used anymore. So again, it's resurrecting a dead name, although that one was very recently dead, whereas Captain Marvel was long dead. So I mean, it's It's something, yeah. Okay, so that Justin's brought up something that I wanted to talk about.
Oh yes, I did love that.
So, so there's something about Captain Marvel that I thought the reason why I wanted to use Captain Marvel as the case study to talk about the man babies in specific was because Captain Marvel acknowledged the man baby phenomenon for the first time that I know. It's aware. Captain Marvel is aware of the man baby phenomenon and actually directly references it in the movie several times. One of those times is when there's the biker guy who tells her to smile.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And the other thing that I noticed that was, I mean, this could be just a total coincidence, but it seems to me that that's unlikely. Annette Bening, right? She's playing Marvel, right? So Marvel, who used to be a male character. So what they've done is they've taken the Captain Marvel name and taken that from a male character and given it to a female character. And then the movie comes along and doubles down on that by making even the original Captain Marvel's a woman now as well. And I loved that. I thought that was hilarious. And I knew that that was gonna piss off the man babies. And I was laughing at it in the theater when I realized that's Marvel. I was like, oh, they're gonna hate that. The man babies are gonna hate this.
What? Like the female character doesn't even have a male lead character to look up to. She gets to look up to another female character. My god!
But it gets even better than that because her male advisor, her male commander, unit leader, whatever, turns out to be the villain,
the bad guy.
Yeah. So it's like they tripled down on it. So in my opinion, those three things in the movie are all direct references to the man baby phenomenon. And I mean, I could be wrong. They could all be done for totally different reasons. But it seems to me that those three things are a reference and acknowledgement of that. And I'm very glad that a filmmaker has acknowledged. It was inevitable, really. Because I mean, within the film industry itself, this whole man baby thing is notorious by this point. Everybody knows about it, and it's a joke. It's a complete fucking joke. And for example, in Wellington when they were making Mortal Engines, that was known.
Oh yeah,
because Mortal Engines has a female lead, of course. Right. It didn't get a backlash because there was no. Well, there are books, but there's a female character in the books too, so they didn't really have a basis for a backlash. No, I think the only reason there was no backlash is because it didn't do very well, the movie. Because they don't need a basis for a backlash anymore if we've proven that. But so with the Arya Stark thing and the Mulan thing. But I think it's just because it wasn't. See, that's a good you were talking before about aggregate review sites. Those things are so notorious in the industry. Everybody when Mortal Engines came out, there were people at Wingnut, the company that made Mortal Engines, and just with Rotten Tomatoes open on their browser and just refreshing it every 5 seconds, just trying to see because the score kept going down. Right. It started at 50%, and then it kept going down and down and down. And there were people at Wingnut who were just nervously refreshing that thing, It's a big deal. The Rotten Tomatoes and sites like that are a big deal in the industry, and that was a tragic time because I know people who went to the premiere and were like, "Yeah, I liked it," and then the review scores started coming out. Oh no.
Oh man, I did skip Mortal Engines, but it was fascinating to see. So I guess oh well, but yeah, it's it's kind of funny how sometimes there are the backlashes, but there's not backlashes. And the most theory I heard for this particular one is because Brie Larson said something at a press junket or award show that was you know what? I see another thing about cis white men when I get interviewed at this press junket. We need some more diversity in there, and I think that's part of the backlash.
Yes, I think you're onto something there. I think the reason why they chose Arya Stark had nothing to do with the show. It was about the fact that the actor who plays Arya is a feminist. That's what it is. That's what it'll be. Maisie Williams has come out on numerous occasions, even just recently with International Women's Day. So she is one of the popular sort of celebrity feminists. That'll be what it is.
Yeah, so that's that's probably going to happen to like who's the actress that played Hermione? That she was also in Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, exact. Emma Watson, same exact thing.
Yeah, right. That's what I thought. Is now I'm trying to think. It's like, was there ever like a man baby backlash of Beauty and the Beast? Because I don't know. Because it's like there was always like a female lead character in that one. I just didn't think that. I thought Beauty and the Beast was just okay. It doesn't hold a candle to the original animated classic. But that's me.
I never saw it because I'm just not really interested in that stuff.
Yeah, and now Disney's like making a live action remake of Lion King, and it's just like, I don't know.
I mean, it's Favreau, so it'll probably be a good movie.
Yeah. But I can like say a whole thing about like live action remakes because it's like, well, I didn't realize this until like someone commented on the live action remake of Avatar: Last Airbender by Netflix. That's okay. But why make a live action remake? Are you saying there's something illegitimate about like the original? And it's kind of like it's one thing to like reimagine it like with Maleficent or like make a sequel like with Christopher Robin, which I did enjoy, but like just retelling the same story with like updates or something like that, or
like, I mean, I gotta say I completely disagree. Like for me, like I think it doesn't make any sense to just go live action remakes as a rule have a thing about them, a quality that doesn't really happen. Like, I mean, you got to take it on a case by case basis.
Yeah, that's fair.
Saying that some X live action remake was bad has no bearing on a potential Lion King film. That you could use stuff from the trailer potentially, but for me, like what you look at is you look at who's making the Lion King remake. Well, it's Jon Favreau. Well, what did Jon Favreau do in this vein? Well, he did the live action remake of The Jungle Book. Was that movie good? Yes, it's fucking awesome. So like, so you know that I don't get the. I mean, it could turn out to be a bad movie. Jon Favreau hasn't made one of those so far, but he could. It's not impossible.
True.
I do think it'll probably be good though, just because it's Favreau and Favreau is awesome.
Plus, I got to remember that the remake is already exists. So even if somehow they do make like an American version of like Akira, I still have the original that I can like watch, and I do enjoy Akira. As weird as that movie is, but yeah, and sometimes they can like do it well. Like I actually did like Alita Battle Angel. I thought that was a pretty good live action like adaptation.
I could have gone to see that and I didn't because it just didn't. It seemed like something
I'm not saying it's great, so it's like it's okay if you skipped it because like you can wait until like it's available to rent or like streaming. Because like my brothers personally went to see it because like my brothers is a fan of the manga and we actually rewatched the anime from the 90s the night before we went to see it, and the live action movie was better because there was more to that movie as opposed to the anime. There was actually twice as much like a story there, but yeah, it is what it is.
I'm not a big anime guy. I'm not a big Japanese culture person in general, really.
True.
Part of that is because my background is studying Chinese history, and that does not make me a fan of Japan. But quite the opposite, in fact. But I have to say I am a big fan of Satoshi Kon.
Yes,
he's a genius. He just happens to be an anime. That's the way I look at it. Is it he just happens to be? And whereas if you look at a guy like who's the Miyazaki is not someone who just happens to be an anime. He's very much an anime person consciously. That's his field. Like, it drips off his stuff. Whereas I think Satoshi Kon, like, he could have his stuff could have been in any medium. It's just a good storyteller. That's what,
right.
I think that with Satoshi Kon, he did draw manga before. He had a manga called Opus before he started making A Perfect Blue. And but according to like Every Frame in a Painting, when he did his video essay on Satoshi Kon, is that like Satoshi Kon decided to be an animator just to make the quick cuts that he wanted to make in his like storytelling. So that's pretty much the reason he chose the medium of animation to tell a story, because it does what he wanted to do. I mean, look at the opening sequence of Paprika. How can you do that in live action? It's like,
no, you couldn't do it on a Japanese budget, that's for sure. Do you know how much?
Yes.
That's the other thing about the Japanese film industry that sort of makes me a bit disinterested, is they tend to not spend very much money on their films. Like, for example, okay, here's an example. The one I always bring up is oh god, what's it called? The space battleship Yamato.
Yes,
that's what it's called, right?
Yes,
I'm just going to go to the page for it now because I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head. But so that when Space Battleship Yamato was made, that was like a bizarrely high budget for a Japanese film. It was a large. They wanted a bigger production values that is normal for that, you know, for Japanese films, and the actual amount of money they spent on it was like $30 million or something. Like, it was fuck off. I mean, like. Yeah, it's a little bit cute or something. I don't know what the word for it is, but it's a bit of a
kawaii. But yeah, that's a fair point, because like in Japan, from what I heard, is television that's the big major media thing as opposed to films. Where in America, it's kind of like the opposite way. Television shows, generally speaking, get smaller budgets as compared to films, and in Japan, it's the opposite way with like tokusatsu and like live action stuff. And
well, that was traditionally the relationship between TV and film, but that's not really the case anymore. Game of Thrones, for example, the latest. The last season of Game of Thrones is like, but I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's a lot. It's like movie level budgets.
You're right.
And I was actually wrong on Space Battleship Yamato. It's even worse than I thought. It was 23.9 million. That's what the budget was. It was like, we really need to spend some money on this one. Let's break out the checkbook. $24 million. That's like, I mean, it's not a lot. As a director, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, you know, just from but as a director on a big movie, you couldn't do much with that. That's like whoever made that movie was incredibly handcuffed in what he could do. So like, if you watch that movie and it doesn't come across well, that's not necessarily his fault. But so that's one of the reasons I love the American film industry in terms of studying it is one thing, because the unions are really strong. That's always nice. But also because there are some stuff I don't like about the unions, which I talk about in my rocker video that I'm doing, because they're national unions that are top down, run by a board and all that shit. Not at all the syndicalist model for union organizing, but they still have a lot of power in the industry, and I like that. Anyway, the other thing I like about it is the fact that they actually they're prepared to put the money down to get good production values. And as a director, like that is really inviting, because it means you can do that what you're talking about, like Paprika. You could do the intro to Paprika as a live action thing. You could do that. They're like, nothing's impossible, and that like that's really interesting and like unheard of, and that makes it attractive. And that's why I keep my eye on things like the MCU. There's also the fact that they're relaxing movies that take your mind off like the rise of fascism and all that. But beyond that, though, they're also good because it's just nice seeing this. Because like for example, Doctor Strange. I don't really like the Doctor Strange movie much. I thought the Doctor Strange movie was kind of middle of the. It didn't stand out in terms of quality. It was like average quality, but there were some interesting uses of visual effects in that movie that I had never seen before. So there's stuff like that. Like that, a lot of stuff comes out of Hollywood where even if the overall movie might not be interesting, in terms of the way the industry works, it's interesting. It's really worthwhile keeping an eye on American stuff, because a lot of interesting new techniques come out of there. And like, you can't get that in Japan, because you got to spend the money on that in order to get it. I guess is what I'm saying.
Even for TV shows, because like in the anime industry, like I think it was like Production IG or like Madhouse. I forget which one. I think it's Production IG. In like in 2001, they did like just a 40-minute movie called Blood: The Last Vampire. It was just
to like show, hey, look what we can do with digital animation. Look what we can do with computers. No cell animation, no like keyframes and stuff like that. Look how good we can make it look. And it's the Blood the Last Vampire is okay. It's interesting. But the reason why digital animation became the norm in Japan in the anime industry, not because they can do so many things to make it look good or so many things that they would be difficult to do in like a 2D animation, it's just because it was much cheaper. It's just like it's much cheaper to make something that looks okay and then put it out there on television. And even there are some mistakes that make it to television that they just like correct for like the DVD release. And so yeah, is and then plus it's like anime is just like pulpy anyway, especially TV shows. They sometimes they like experiment with like and go off in the different directions or do something interesting, like the Noah Tomio blog is kind of famous for that. But most of the times it's just like if you've seen one here in anime, you've probably seen them all. And hopefully this is not the one with the 12-year-old as the main character. but sometimes you get like anime shows, like you mentioned in the comments, like, yeah, Paranoid Agent. Oh, God, I wish that one has been licensed rescued. I'm going to like BitTorrent it or like find like a skeezy site to like stream that off of.
Yeah, I saw that through torrent. It's the only way to watch it that I could find.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great show. I was just going to say, someone in the a bunny in the box has mentioned the film Green Book. I haven't seen that, and I had the opportunity to see it and decided not to. And that's because it's, from what I've heard, its politics are like regressive.
Yeah, it is. I did see it. I did enjoy the performances from like Viggo Mortensen and I'm gonna butcher this, Mahershala Ali, and I thought that was great. And I did enjoy it as watching it. But then when I started thinking about it more, it was like, oh yeah. And the fact that the actor had to like apologize, Ali had to apologize to the family of the character he's portraying.
Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, personally, I wouldn't necessarily hold up the performances of Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali as being points in the movie's favor, because they don't do bad. So, like, I guess you could say casting them was good on the director's part. That was a good idea. Because if you're going to make a terrible movie, you might as well get some good actors in it. But yeah, that's good for the actors that they did good performances. But I wouldn't give credit to the movie for that.
It's driving Miss Ali.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, you shouldn't be making films about race politics that are getting compared to Driving Miss Daisy. That's not great. That's not ideal. And what's the other one? There's another one of a similar kind of thing where there's a black guy driving a white person around for the whole movie. I can't remember what it is. There's another movie along a similar veins. I can't recall it off the top of my head. But yeah, that's almost like a subgenre of like of movies, like where the black man who's the assistant kind of does the like the footman kind of thing, the butler sort of thing.
Yeah,
there's even a movie about it, but that movie is terrible. Have you seen that movie? The Butler, have you seen that? It's so bad. Holy crap.
I don't think so.
It won an Oscar, and it shouldn't have. It was so boring and so authoritarian. Holy crap. The basic premise of the movie was, isn't the presidency cool? Isn't it great? Let's celebrate it and glorify it and idolize it and like, as you know, there's not a lot of meat there for an anarchist. Let's just say that. Like, there's not a lot to latch on to.
Green Book was a white savior kind of narrative. Even Viggo Mortensen's character, it had to inform that guy, wait a minute, you don't know about this recording artist, you don't know about this recording artist, and it's just like, oh my god, that's right, that was in the movie. The guy's supposed to be a musician, yet he didn't know about like contemporary stuff. That was bad. But I do agree with Justin. It's like that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is definitely the one that was like one of the good movies that did get a nomination, and I think it's well deserved to like win Best Animated Feature. Even though I did like Mamoru Hosoda's Mirai movie, but I wouldn't say that Mirai is one of Mamoru Hosoda's great movies. It's one of his pretty good movies, really good movies. I think his great movies like The Girl Who Left the Time and Summer Wars. But no, Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse is like, to me, that's the best Spider-Man movie, or at least one of the best Spider-Man movies. I had to really rewatch like
Homecoming and then like Spider-Man 2 to like see how I compare, but it's definitely those three are in like the top three of Spider-Man movies. And it's like, yeah, I just love Spider-Man and Spider-Verse. I think I only saw it twice. I haven't seen it for a third time, but man, there's so much to love about that. It's like, especially I think it's like the reason why it deserved the best on animated feature, because it was designed by the directors that every frame in that movie could be a panel from a comic book, and it was like designed like that. And it's like, and that's it's not just like Captain Marvel or the MCU where these are comic book stories told in live action as the superhero movies. No, Spider-Man and Spider-Verse is a comic book movie, as is the closest to like a comic book being put onto the screen. And so from the vibrant colors, it uses the word bubbles and the soundtracks, and it's like movement through scenes. Yeah, oh man. And plus the story was good as well, and the performances was well. So yeah.
It's a Lord and Miller film. Those two don't make bad movies. That's why that's why they stopped working on Solo, because Solo was bad.
Yeah. I enjoy Solo, but it's like, yeah.
Dude, I hated Solo so much. I was literally raging in my seat at how terrible it was as I was watching it. And that just because I can't talk too much. I was watching that movie in a non-standard cinema scenario where I could not walk out of the movie. I could not leave. I can't explain why, because it gets into industry stuff that I shouldn't be talking about. But basically, I couldn't leave the film because of industry etiquette, and I had to sit through it, and it just that made me hate it. If I could have just left, I probably wouldn't have hated it so much. But
yeah, that's fair.
Holy crap! My God. The whole premise of that movie was bad, which is the premise the premise was let's explain everything from the past that hasn't been explained, even stuff that doesn't need an explanation, like why is Han called Han Solo, and why does Chewbacca have a bowcast have a thing but bandolier, and where did Han Solo's blaster come from, and all this bullshit that no one cares about. And yeah, it was dumb. It was so bad. Oh my God, I hate it so much.
And yeah, I haven't rewatched it, and then again, I don't think I have the urge to rewatch it. It's kind of like, it's done, I'll watch it. So that's not a sign of a really good movie, in my opinion. If I want to rewatch something, that's a great or a really good TV show, book, TV or movie, in my opinion. So yeah, definitely, that's not unfair.
Justin Hanvey said that he didn't think any of the movies that got Oscar noms this year were good, minus Spider-Man to the Spider. I disagree with that. I think there was a number of good films. Roma, for example, The Favorite was another one.
I did love The Favorite. Yeah.
Well, because the other thing about even if I didn't like The Favorite, I'd still be glad it got a nod, because my favorite actor in the world is Olivia Colman. And and she won an Oscar this year, so I was very happy about that.
Good for her.
She's been my favorite actor for years, ever since she turned dramatic. She used to be a comedy actor who only did sketch TV shows and sitcoms and stuff, but then she decided to turn dramatic, and holy shit, her entire career of dramatic acting has just been fucking amazing. And yeah, she's brilliant. So I was very pleased that she won an Oscar. Black Panther was another one that got noms. That's good. I don't know. There's got a number of good films, in my opinion. I do understand the point that was being made, which is that there was a lot of forgettable trash in there as well.
I skipped Vice. I was not interested in Vice.
I had no interest in seeing Vice. I also had no interest in seeing Black Klansman, because I've heard that it paints a positive picture of the police. And I have
it does. Yeah.
I have no interest in that. I didn't see A Star Is Born because I've seen two different versions of that in the past, and I have no desire to see another one. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just okay.
I'm sure they did some interesting stuff with it that hasn't been in any previous version, but it's been adapted 5 times now, and I don't know.
Exactly.
I've been there. I've done that. It's
Sam Elliott. I guess Sam Elliott, what's the best thing about The Star is Born? Bohemian Rhapsody. That's like, I'm a Queen fan, and so I was kind of interested, but then I heard about like, according to the people that like if they straight watch Freddie Mercury bit, so there was some backlash to that. But I'm kind of glad that I didn't see Bohemian Rhapsody because of what I heard about. Well, it's directed by Bryan Singer, so there's that. But I heard that like he was like paid $40 million, and but yet left the project like towards the end and still get like his huge director's paycheck. So yeah, so I don't feel the need to like see Bohemian Rhapsody after learning of all that.
Yeah, I'm glad that Rami Malek's career is going well. Beyond that, I wish Bohemian Rhapsody hadn't been made, to be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to true stories, if the people who the real thing is based on complaining, I usually don't watch the movie, because I mean there are exceptions. There's always exceptions, but usually that's a really, really bad sign. And it's disrespect. Even if the movie is fucking, it could be Blade Runner. I don't care if it's pissed off the actual people. I mean, it's entertainment. You know, it should be making people happy, not annoying them. So like, you know, it tends to be how I look at things.
Yeah. I did actually like BlacKkKlansman a lot, but there's the positive portrayal of cops. I actually kind of have the visceral reaction at the end because of like how Spike Lee tied into the story events of BlacKkKlansman to like modern day events, and it's just like almost a gut punch of reminders like this shit's still happening today. So it's like that's one positive I can say about BlacKkKlansman. But yeah, the positive viewing of cops is like it's totally understandable.
I saw Boots Riley's criticism of the film along that line, and that was all I needed. I was like, okay, the guy who made Sorry to Bother You thinks it's bad. I'm okay with not seeing this. You know?
Sorry to Bother You was, I saw that twice in the movie theater because it's like when that surprise happened, it's like, oh my god, it was so brilliant as well.
Sorry to Bother You never actually screened at my local movie theater, so I never saw it in the theater. I had to watch it online, but yeah, no, it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and I think that in 20 years we're going to look back at that film and say it was ahead of its time. A lot.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, I love the white voice kind of thing.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's just clicking to me, especially as how Danny Glover says this, like it's the kind of voice you have when you have all your bills paid and you're like, you have a care in the world, and well, who would have that? White people. And it's also kind of interesting how no one has the white voice. So it's like there is that kind of person that's like doesn't worry about life, but yet that's not most people. So that's why it's the mythical thing of like the white voice. And so yeah, that was kind of clever on like the movie. Sorry to bother you for that. So that's one aspect I did like about it. And plus it was funny. It was just like funny.
I'm tempted to see that documentary RBG about Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Yes.
I haven't seen that, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, I heard good things about that. It's on I didn't have a chance to see it in theater, but it is on Hulu, so I'm interested in seeing that.
I mean, I'm fundamentally opposed to the United States Supreme Court as an institution, but if you're gonna have it, it should be with people like her on it, you know. So
yeah,
if you're gonna have one, which you shouldn't, but if you're gonna fill it up with people like her, definitely, rather than anybody else. But yeah, so I'm conflicted on that. I'll probably give it a watch at some point.
In the past year, there was a couple of really good documentaries I did see because I thought Whitney was actually quite good. And what was kind of interesting about Whitney is that it broke a news story about Whitney Houston at the end, and it was one of the two family members that kind of confirmed that. So if you read the news story about like what the documentary Whitney broke, you kind of get a spoiler for the end. But I still say that documentary is interesting to watch, regardless. But the Free Solo was also really good. I'm glad I saw that in the movie theater because, like, yeah, it's so good on the small screen, but the scene all that imagery on the big screen of like the mountain climbing is a sight to behold. And it's like I can understand why that one won best documentary, but like I'm not sure if this one was nominated. But I think the best documentary of last year of 2018 was one of my favorite movies of last year was like Won't You Be My Neighbor, the Fred Rogers documentary, because. I have cried in movie theaters before. I have no problem just like let my emotions get out there. Cried at The Land of Logan, cried at like a couple of anime movies, and like, but Won't You Be My Neighbor had me as a blubbering, sobbing person throughout the whole movie. That was the most I ever cried watching the movie, and it's just
have you seen I, Daniel Blake yet?
No,
another film I told you to see. Well,
yes,
if you don't cry in that one, you're dead inside.
Yeah,
that has one of the most powerful scenes in the history of cinema in it. I'm not going to go into detail. Anyone who's seen it knows the scene I'm talking about. You should get your off your ass and watch these leftist movies. What are you doing?
Yes, I don't know, and it's plus it's like I should also rewatch some movies because it wasn't until like Indio Studios video essay and then like 6 or 8 parts on like Mad Max Fury Road did I realize, oh my god, there's some leftist critique in Mad Max Fury Road in the text.
Yeah. Well, I mean, George Miller is a very prominent, very vocally feminist dude, and he you know how long it took him to get Fury Road made, and that's why. It's because he wanted it to have an overtly feminist message, and so that's why it took him 20 years to get the movie made. Not quite 20, I think it was 15 years, something like that. But a long fucking time anyway. And you know, he had to go and basically self-finance it by making Happy Feet. Yeah, because you know he became one of the richest filmmakers on earth in order to self-finance that film. He didn't. I don't think he ended up self-financing all of it, but
right.
But yeah, yeah,
that's very strange.
That's well, I mean, it's the patriarchal nature of the film industry.
There's that.
If you want to make a feminist movie with a feminist message, it's going to hold you back. Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I use some clips from quite a few documentaries in the video I'm working on at the moment. So for example, I got some stuff in there. Have you seen it's from 2014, but I only heard about it this year. It's a documentary called She's Beautiful When She's Angry. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
It's about second wave feminism in America, the second wave feminist movement. It's pretty interesting. It's quite good. I've got some clips from that. I've got some clips from a documentary called At the River I Stand, which is about the death of Martin Luther King and what he was doing when he was murdered. Because I bring that up in the video that he was making a speech about class struggle. I actually say in the video that it was the day he was murdered, but actually it was the day before he was murdered. I'm going to have to correct that somewhere. But so that's what he was doing. And the documentary's about the Memphis sanitation strike. So that was happening in Memphis when that's why he gave the speech. He went to Memphis where he died to give a speech to support striking sanitation workers.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so there's some footage from that documentary, which is also really good. That's from back in the 90s, I think. And what else? There's a third one, but I can't remember what it is. Anyway, yeah. Oh, and this documentary about the Spanish Civil War. Of course, I need a lot of footage of Spanish Civil War and a video about anarcho-syndicalism.
That's almost a necessity.
Oh, and a video. So there's a movie from the 1950s called Salt of the Earth, which you should look into because it's really interesting. It was blacklisted. The guy who directed it was a communist who was blacklisted, and that he managed to make that film anyway. Maybe that film was before he was blacklisted. I can't remember. Anyway, it's a film about a striking immigrant workers, Mexican workers who go on strike. And it's very cool. It's a very good movie. Well, the politics of them, I don't know. The movie itself, it's a bit cheap, but it's the subject matter of the film is really interesting. Because it's also not only because that's the strike that it's about had heavy involvement from the women who were. Hold on, I just unplugged my headphones.
Oh, okay.
The striking workers that are about were supported by their female family members, things like that, spouses, mothers, whatever. And so there was a whole feminist side to that strike as well. And it's considered to be one of the first acts of the second wave movement because it was in 1951 and the second wave movement started in 1949. So it was very early. It's I think it might actually be the very first film to reference second wave feminism that was ever made. And of course it was blacklisted. But yeah, it's communist and feminist. So I was going to bring it up. I'm making a video. So after the video I'm working on at the moment is finally fucking done, I'm going to make a whole series of videos that I'm planning at the moment. One of which is going to be about intersectional feminism and anarchism and the compatibility between the two, similarities between the two. Stuff like that. And I'm going to bring up a whole lot of stuff to do with feminist involvement in the labor movement and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
The critical role played by women in strikes throughout history. But all sorts of stuff like that. And that bread and roses thing that's why I linked to that, because I'm going to use that clip in that video, because that bread and roses, like, that's arguably the most famous strike of all time. And that was a women's strike.
Yeah, this is why I call myself a baby anarchist in my Twitter bio, because it's just like there's so much I still need to like read up on, because like I shared this on my social media. I don't know how I found it. It was just in my feed of the guy who's in a 4-panel comic, and he's like with the fortune tower in the desert, and fortune tower is like, hey, I see that I am looking to your room. You have a lot of unread communist literature. I mean, a lot of unread communist literature. And I said, I feel called out because in the last panel, the guy is sweating. But like most people would think, oh God, the guy is sweating because he has a lot of communist literature. No, I'm sweating because I have a lot of unread communist literature.
Well, I mean, for the first 8 years of being an anarchist, I hadn't read fuck all. I'd read Chomsky and
that's fair.
That's it. Yeah, so I'm not very widely read either. I know anarchists who are better read than me, and I consult with them sometimes on things. But yeah.
And plus, like, if it's, I can understand how for like reading like nonfiction or like either dry history or like philosophy, that kind of like it's sometimes difficult for some people, which is why I'm an anarchist, because of like YouTube, because of like libertarian socialist rants and like Thoughts Line was a big one to make me an anarchist, and so so it's kind of like, and there's audible anarchists and there's still audiobooks. I mean, I like worked 8 hours in like Stockroom, just like putting together kits to like send off to like other parts of the plan. So it's like being able to like listen to the podcast or discussions like this or other discussions on your channel or in prior channels. It really just helps the monotony of the day and get me through the day. So it's like I kind of feel like I'm still not like reading the text of Kropotkin. So it's like I have to like re-listen to them a couple of times, but still that's not a bad right to like absorb the information at least subconsciously. So I have like listened to The Conquest of Bread in audiobook form, and like I'm listening to Mutual Aid in audiobook form. So I'm still getting like the basics of like or some interesting ideas about anarchism, and just really digging it. And I'm just like, why not do this? And it's like, why not have a society like that? It's kind of like it's kind of like when
it reminds
you. Go ahead.
No, sorry to interrupt, but I was just it's very relevant to what you're saying. So I was having a conversation with Captain Andy recently, and we're talking about how one of the problems with anarchist theory is that this is not just anarchism; it's anything that's a radically different society than ours. It can be difficult to imagine it. And well, actually, it is specific to anarchism in a way, because one of the interesting things about anarchist theory is that if you read Marxist-Leninist stuff, for example, it basically lays out, and Maoism is another one, stuff like that. Fascism, another thing. If you read that stuff, it lays out in detail exactly what kind of society it should be, exactly how it should be organized, and specific details about a lot of different things in society. And when you read anarchist theory, that stuff's not there. You know, like Rocket doesn't talk about how the police should be organized, but how the military.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, he mentions that anarchism tends to be about militia rather than organized standing armies. But beyond that, he doesn't go into detail. He doesn't talk about how the justice system might look, how the education system might look. He never talks about anything like that. Neither does Kropotkin really. Kropotkin goes into a bit more detail, but not much. None of the anarchist theorists really did that. And the reason they didn't is because they were anti-authoritarians. They weren't trying to tell people exactly how to organize themselves. What they were trying to tell people is, it's up to you. You're the best one to know that. You know better than anyone else how to organize your community. You're in your community. You know, that's the whole point of anarchism, is that the Wellington City Council doesn't know as well as I do how things should be organized in Miramar, my suburb where I live. The people in Miramar know how to do it. You know, people outside Miramar, they don't know as well as we do in Miramar. That's just obvious, you know. And so, like, that's the whole point, is that the anarchist theorists aren't trying to tell you exactly in detail exactly how to organize your society. The downside of that is it does mean that people have to use their imaginations a bit when they're trying to imagine what an anarchist society that's bigger than scale than any of the ones that have existed in reality might look like. And that's why things like the dispossessed that's why they are really important. You know, a novel that depicts an anarchist society in the future. And there's been a few of those, but I was thinking one project that I've kind of been toying with recently is I could do a Kaiserreich fan fiction. Do you know about Kaiserreich?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Do you know about the genre of video games called grand strategy?
Ooh, is this like the Paradox games? Okay, yeah.
Correct.
I don't play them, but I can respect them. Yes.
Right.
Like the Total War franchise, right?
No. The Total War is the next level down.
Oh, okay. So it'll be the Paradox game.
Yeah. So Kaiserreich is a mod for one of their franchises called Hearts of Iron, right?
Oh, yeah. I heard about that one. Yeah.
Hearts of Iron 4 is the most recent game in the series, and so you can get a Kaiserreich mod for that. And what the Kaiserreich mod is it's the basic idea behind it is, what if Germany won World War I? And their thesis is that, because if you look at what was happening in Europe at that time, the two big movements on the left were authoritarian socialism, Leninism, basically, and syndicalism. Those were the two big things. And the way it works is that they were divided by country. So in England and France, syndicalism was the big thing, whereas in Germany and Russia, state socialism was the big thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so the way it went for us is that we got state socialism because of the Russian Revolution is what happened. But in Kaiserreich, it suggests that if Germany won World War I, then Britain and France would be in a terrible state after World War I and could have had syndicalist revolutions.
Yeah.
That's what happens. Syndicalists take over Britain and France, and the aristocrats in Britain and France flee. The French aristocrats and ruling elite flee to Africa, and the British royal family and aristocracy flee to Canada. And so basically, Europe sort of starts getting taken over by syndicalists. And there's a syndicalist revolution that can happen in America in the game, and also in Spain, where it happened in reality. Except this time you can support them, and now they win.
Yes.
So the whole thing is like anarchist wish fulfillment, and especially for an anarcho-syndicalist like me, it's wish fulfillment. It doesn't totally work, because the way a grand strategy game works is that it's one person, the game player, making all the decisions, where they would have actually been made through direct democracy or through votes at a worker council or something like that. But the thing that's really cool about Kaiserreich is that the people who made it actually know what they're talking about when it comes to anarchism pretty well. And so you can see, this manifests in two ways. One is that the people that it brings up are real anarchists who are often quite obscure. So, for example, at the start of the game, when you start the game in 1936, France is the leader of France, which in Kaiserreich basically means the person who's the most popular mainstream political figure. So in an anarchist society, there would still be thinkers, leaders, people who had ideas and were listened to, but they wouldn't control anything directly. That's the difference, right? They wouldn't have any formalized power of any kind, only influence. So anyway, the people that Kaiserreich identifies as having the influence in these countries are accurate. For example, France, the guy who's at the top is a guy called Sebastian Faure, who wrote books about the history of anarchism and was an anarchist thinker. So, like, and he's obscure though. You probably haven't. I'm guessing you hadn't heard of him, right? Like,
No.
I hadn't heard of him before I saw Kaiserreich either. Although, actually, Rocker does mention him at one point. I just didn't realize it. Anyway, so that's my point: is that they know the history of anarchism quite well, and they also have figured out what anarchist France and Britain would look like. And it's really cool because one of the things about anarchism is that it's not uniform, right? So it manifests differently in different places based on the culture and traditions of the people in that area, right? So in Mexico, in Chiapas, in Chiapas, it's got a Mayan thing to it, you know. And in Rojava, it's got a very Syrian Kurdish kind of thing to it.
Exactly.
So it's always different. It rejects uniformity. That's another reason why they don't just spell it out to you when the theorists, because that would undercut that completely, right? Yeah. So that's cool though, because in Kaiserreich, anarchism, the anarchist society is quite different in Britain and France and America if the American Revolution happens. So in Britain, it's organized around the worker councils, the TUCs, the trade union councils. That's a real system that exists in Britain in real life. But in the game, they take over the society basically, which is
I see, yeah.
And then in France, where it's less about trade union councils and they have a more ANCOM style system. It's still syndicalism, but it's got an anarcho-communist flavor to it. It's closer to ANCOM than in Britain.
Right.
And in America, it's organized around the IWW. So it's more like, it varies more. There's more little individual pockets of it's not uniformly, even though the country that they create is called the Combined Syndicates of America, it still has more variation among because you know, at the time in the IWW, they were mostly anarchists, mostly anarcho-syndicalists, but there were a lot of random ideologies in the mix, you know. Yeah. So yeah, all these different, and you know, Mexico is also syndicalist in this game. The Mexican syndicalism has its own flavor, you know. So that is very accurate as well. And also things like they. In the game, it says that France has 36,000 communes, which means in anarcho-communism, a commune is like a division of the. So society is divided into communes, and there's 36,000 right in France. And I actually did the maths based on the population of France in 1936, and I calculated that they were correct. That's how many there would be. So that's like pretty cool, you know. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like that's the thing that like I remember posting this in my Facebook, and my older brother, who seems to be like a more left than like my other brothers for sure, or my other family members, he asked like, is there like anarchist fiction that we can like point to? And you mentioned that like there's only books. The author of like Tales of Earthseas also wrote a anarchist like fiction.
I mentioned the Dispossessed before.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
There's also a 19th century ANCOM guy called William Morris wrote a book called News from Nowhere that depicts it's a utopian socialist society, but that is anarchist basically. Exactly. I criticize that in my video because that I'm working on at the moment, because it's not fully communist, because there's still a class system, a gender class system.
Oh yeah.
Because the guy who wrote it was a product of his time. He was a patriarch. He was a sexist. Yeah. So his society still has traditional gender roles. So I basically call it out as not being truly communist. But it's pretty cool. For the record, Anarcho-Pact is not like that book. And then the other one that sometimes, because in my series I bring up the Mars trilogy, by Kim Stanley Robinson, that depicts the founding of an anarchist society. So there's the revolution, there's multiple revolutions, and then there's a whole like the rise of a corporate culture and there's the backlash against that is the rise of the left, and so it's more foundational than the Dispossessed. In the Dispossessed, the anarchist society has already existed for 200 years at the start. And same thing in News from Nowhere. So yeah, and the other one that people sometimes bring up is, do you know Ian Banks?
Oh no, I think I've heard of the name, but I'm not familiar.
He wrote a series of books called the Culture series, which includes
Okay.
novels such as The Player of Games and Consider Phlebas. That society is also regarded as anarchist by some anarchists.
Yeah.
I don't
Okay.
think Ian M. Banks wrote it that way knowingly, unlike
Okay.
the Mars trilogy, and because in The Dispossessed they directly
Right.
mention syndicalism, syndicates, that kind of. It's obviously an anarcho-syndicalist society. They directly reference
Yeah.
that, and in Mars trilogy they mention anarcho-communism by name, and so it's obviously anarchist. Whereas I don't think Ian M. Banks wrote the Culture series that way. It just happens to be.
Yeah.
So there's fiction options, but they are only novels. That's true, only novels.
Yeah.
There's no anarchist movie out there, which sucks.
I didn't think there would be any anarchist movie because I was trying to think of what socialist and communist movies would they be if there's any, and I don't think there is, because especially not made in America. I don't think Americans would, not the major Hollywood system would a positive viewing of say Russia or the USSR or any other communist or socialist kind of movies or movements as they were, because their Red Scare is still a thing. I still kind of get that problem when I talk to some my conservative coworkers or even my father, because my father said that he said Sweden was socialist, and that's where I was I spoke up. Wait a minute, do the workers own control the means of production in Sweden?
No.
And no, they don't.
Well, I mentioned on Facebook that in some ways that the Nordic model, which is what Sweden is part of, the Nordic model is actually less regulated than America in certain ways. The finance sector, Wall Street.
Yeah, that's right.
That stuff is more regulated in the Nordic model. There's more rules around financial speculation and all that, which is good, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you're actually making real stuff, like manufacturing products, there in some cases there's less regulation on you than in America. So it's certainly not socialist paradise. It's certainly not nowhere is, so yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, communism is where the government does everything. Socialism is where government does most things. Capitalism is where the government does less things. Anarchism where there's no government. And I was just
literally all of those are wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then again, also Camp Andy mentioned in his last video, there's communism, and then there's communism, and then there's communism, and it's just
personally, I think that there's only one type of communism that actually qualifies as communism, and that's ANCOM. The others aren't communism.
Yes. I agree with you. The
moment you involve a state, you're directly contradicting the definition of what anarchism is supposed to mean. So if you have a state, you're not anarchist. If you have a class system, you're not communist. You have a class system.
Yes.
And so that's why anarcho-syndicalism is not full ANCOM, because it still has some elements of those kinds of things. It still has some leftovers from liberal democracy of those kinds of things, and it's a transitional system.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the things I bring up about The Dispossessed when I talk about it, is that because The Dispossessed is interesting. Ursula Le Guin does not depict anarcho-syndicalist because it's about a moon. There's the planet itself, and then there's a moon, and basically there's a revolution on the planet, and the revolutionaries lose a war, so they basically flee to the moon and they live there. And and so the moon has become only the anarchists live on the moon, and so they've made it their own society out of it. But it's not depicted as a perfect utopian society. It's depicted as having problems. And one of the reasons for that is because anarcho-syndicalism is supposed to be a transitory system. And they've gotten into a situation in that story where they can't transition out of it because of the context of what's going on. So in that scenario, they've got the moon and the planet's liberal democracy, capitalism, all that. And the moon is anarchist. And they can't defeat each other. So they're kind of at a stalemate. And that means that they constantly need to compete with the liberal democracy. So they need to keep their industrial output high, which means they need to stay syndical. But syndicalism is not designed to be permanent. So that it brings up these issues. And one of them is this idea of there's a sort of barrier between the liberal democracies and anarchism. There's a border. essentially. And anarchism is not supposed to be about borders, as you know. So that's an issue, and she brings that up. And like that's what I like about the Dispossessed, is that it's not propaganda. It's not. She's not trying to say this is a perfect system. This is like, and she's not lying about it. She's presenting it as if you had that scenario, if you had a moon that was anarcho-syndicalist for 200 years, that's probably what it would look like. It wouldn't be perfect.
Yeah.
There's some cool things about it. For example, the people in the society have never heard the word prison before. Like, a prison is a totally novel concept to them. The only way they can understand it is that they bring up the comparison of when you're in a car and you're a child, the parent might lock the kiddie lock on the back seat of the car, so the kid can't just jump out of the car. That's the only thing in their society that's remotely like a prison. And so that so there's some cool things about it, but it's not propaganda, and I really like that. As one of the reasons I respect it. I don't think I would have written it that way if I was her, because I would have been wanting people to become attracted to anarcho-syndicalism. So I might not have written it as honestly as she did, and that that humbles me a bit. Like I think that's really cool. Yeah. Anyway, I guess we should wrap this up. We've been going for almost 3 hours.
But no, it was a great chat. It's like, even though in parts of it is mostly me listening to you, but like you were the one that made me a feminist, and so I totally appreciate that. And just thank you for like coming on, because like I know that you said like on your old channel, if you got to be and hang out with Jim Sterling, that'll be so cool for you, stuff like that. Well, Garrett, right now you're mine, Jim Sterling.
Well, I can't think of higher praise.
Yes, thank God for him. So. As I'll do a little.
It's one of the things I'm really jealous about of Harry about, is that Jim Sterling knows who he is and refers to him as a friend of the channel. That I would give my arm for that. That's so cool. Holy crap.
Yes.
And it's funny because I mean I don't even agree with Jim Sterling on a lot of political issues. Like he's a sort of I don't know, he's anti-capitalist, but generic anti-capitalist. I have a lot of issues with those kinds of people. But at the same time, Jim Sterling is really the only one out there who's doing what he does, which is being a consumer advocate in the games industry without being a fucking Gamergate tool. Like, because there's Total Biscuit does gamer advocacy as well, but he's a horrible Gamergater. So, well, I was before he died.
He was. Yeah, he passed away. Yeah.
And I will speak ill of the dead freely. I never.
Yes.
I've never understood the
don't speak ill of the dead.
I've never understood the what's the word, taboo against that, you know.
I don't know. But yep, so thank you to the audience of Garrett. I am SomeRandomGeek. I occasionally post videos up on my channels. I want to do like other videos, but I haven't gone around to it. I'm in the middle of a couple of projects. I have a lot more ideas of videos I want to do, and some scripts of videos that I want to do, but I haven't gone around to it. And it's going to be a while before that, because starting this Thursday, I'm going to be working at the Emerald City Comic Con. Hey, if you happen to be in Seattle at Emerald City Comic Con, you will see me in costume, but working at booth. So it's just like, come and say hi if you see me. That'll be the weirdest thing. Hey, I saw you in that Garrett stream. It's like, what? Oh my god! You want to buy a pop filter? A pop figure? So as a couple of things is like please give money to like my friend Severa Joe at gmail.com. I'm gonna put her like app in there if you have spare money. I understand it for people that like don't have spare money, but like she's a good comrade. I talk to her all the time. She begs in order to live, and so if you happen to have like a spare $5, $10, that'll be great. Phoenix was just in the chat as well. Her GoFundMe page is like somewhere in the chat. I can give it to like Garrett afterwards. Please give money to like Phoenix. She's a good comrade and awesome, and she'll need the money for her housing situation until by like middle of May, or share around her GoFundMe campaign. And I'm SomeRandomGeek on Twitter at SomeRandomGeek, and that's my pitches.
Very much. And I absolutely agree. Ashley, who you're talking about there, is a great anarchist, good friend. Yeah. All right. And we shall see you next time. Thank you all for watching. Bye.